Hey everyone, today we're going to be discussing every perk in Dead by Daylight. I'm going to be going over all 324 perks in this video and deciding if they're fine or if they need a change, and if so, if that's a buff or a nerf. So let's get into it. We're going to start out on the survivor side and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So we're starting off with a place for us. While healing another survivor, you both gain elusive. Whenever you finish healing the obsession, you both gain elusive for 30 seconds. When the trial starts, you are less likely to be the obsession. I would say this perk probably does need a change as it doesn't really get used at the moment. The most logical thing in my opinion is probably just to add the 30 seconds of elusive as a permanent effect onto all healing actions rather than just the ones with the obsession, as currently I think it's maybe a little bit too niche, and certainly doesn't have a high pick rate. I feel like I never see this perk really. Next up we have Ace in the Hole. Whenever you loot an item from a chest, it will have a visceral or lower rarity add-on, 100% chance for an uncommon or lower rarity add-on. When you escape, you keep your add-ons. Okay, so for this perk, there's actually another sort of adjustment I want to suggest, which is making perks base kit, or not really base kit necessarily, but blending perks into regular gameplay. I think in the case of Ace in the Hole, this perk is already super niche, no one really uses it, chests in general are super outdated, so why not just melt the perk down into how chests regularly function? Remove this perk and then make it so items found in chests always just come with add-ons anyway. I think that'd be quite a cool incentive as well to get people to start looting chests again, so I think that's a pretty good idea. Next up we've got Adrenaline. When all generators are completed, if you are downed or injured, heal instantly. So for this one, I think it's honestly fine. It is a powerful effect, it has been for a very long time, but also it only activates in the end game. It could be completely useless to you if you die sooner. I think it's a fair trade-off, risk-reward type thing. Aftercare. You and up to 3 survivors see each other's auras whenever you unhook them or they unhook you, you finish healing them or they finish healing you. This effect lasts until you are hooked. So I think for this one, honestly, the thing that holds it back from being really good is just the fact that you lose these effects when you get hooked. I don't quite get the point of that. I think a lot of perks are like this, where they have a pretty decent effect, but then they're greatly hindered by some kind of restriction like that on the end. So I think just remove that last line and the perk is fine. Alert! Whenever the killer breaks a pallet or breakable wall or damages a generator, you hear a sound cue and you see that aura for 5 seconds. This is another case I think of a strong perk, but one that is perfectly fine and fair. Any means necessary, I'm gonna say the same thing as well. This lets you pick up a dropped pallet, taking about 3 seconds to reset it. This again is completely fine in my opinion. It is a strong effect, but also perfectly counterable for killers who can simply break the pallet. Apocalyptic Ingenuity. Okay, so this is a really tough one, and one that absolutely needs a change. So after you rummage, you unlock 2 chests, while next to a broken pallet, you can create a new fragile pallet in 4 seconds. These fragile pallets act sort of like the event pallets, where when you throw them, but they don't hit the killer, they just instantly shatter. And if they do hit the killer, they give them, I think, a shorter stun as well. Overall, the activation requirement of this perk is just ridiculously bad. Having to open 2 chests to just make this work is honestly just kind of silly. I don't know why it's 2 chests. There's only 3 chests at base in the trial, so that's 2 of the 3 chests. 1 is usually in the basement. Therefore, I can see why people just basically don't use this perk. Half the number, make it 1 chest, and this would maybe be pretty worth it. Bear in mind it's already a fragile pallet, it's not going to be too game breaking or changing if they change this to just 1. Appraisal. When the trial starts, you earn 4 tokens. Spend 1 token to rummage an empty chest up to 2 times per chest. You rummage chests 80% faster. I think again the problem with this perk is that it's centered around chests, and chests in general are sort of outdated, a little bit pointless I would argue as well. I also think the whole idea of rummaging is also just, it wastes so much time. It's simply not worth it. So I think a good change to this could possibly be that you start off with 4 tokens still, but when you open a chest, maybe you find 2 items instead. Instead of having to rummage the chest again, the chest just opens up with 2 available items right away. I think that's quite a cool idea, and also makes it more efficient as well, I think, when running around. Autodidact. You start the trial with 0 tokens up to 5, and your good basic healing skill checks give 15% less progress. While healing another survivor without a medkit, whenever you hit a basic skill check, you earn 1 token, and you gain gain 15% more progress. This perk was reworked fairly recently, and I actually think nowadays it's fine. It's a niche healing perk, but it does have the potential to be very strong if you manage to build up its stacks. And it's also nowhere near as detrimental as it used to be, with the first 2 skill checks regressing the heal. Nowadays, it's just the first one, which I think isn't that bad. Babysitter, I would say, is another perk that is just fine. Whenever you unhook a survivor, they gain 10% haste for 30 seconds, they leave no pools of blood for 30 seconds, they leave no scratch marks, and you see the killer's aura for 8 seconds. So overall, it's a pretty decent sort of anti-tunnel perk to apply onto other survivors. It's sort of outclassed by other anti-tunnel perks, I'd say, and it's usually best for the person getting tunneled to just have an anti-tunnel perk themselves. But I think for what it is, it's fine. Background player. Whenever the killer picks up another survivor for the next 10 seconds, you gain 50% haste for 5 seconds and gain exhausted for 20 seconds. This used to be a much higher number. I forget if it was like 200% haste or like 300%. It was some like really insanely high number. Nowadays at just 50%, I do think it's a little low. It shouldn't go back to how it was before because that was way too powerful, but currently I do think it's a little bit weak. Maybe whack it up, try it out at, I don't know, 75%, 100%, something like that. I think it'd be fine. Bada bada boom. After repairing 20% of generators, while next to a window, use F to trap it for 60 seconds. All survivors see that window's aura for that time. When the killer vaults that window, the trap explodes and they gain 50% hindered for 6 seconds. So this is chem trap for windows essentially. And the flaw with basically all of these perks is that killers have this big refusal to ever kick a chem trap or vault a window that has a bada bada boom trap on it. So honestly, I think the best way to rework these perks is just to make the little trap thing, just make it a little bit less noticeable, you know? Make it a little bit smaller, maybe make it so it's a little bit more hidden in the corner or something. Make it so you can still notice it as a killer, you can still be rewarded for picking up on, you know, the tiny little trap. But don't make it this like huge like brick in the middle of the vault, you know? Make it at least a little bit hidden. And the same with chem trap, but obviously we'll get to that. Balanced landing, whenever you fall from at least 1.2 meters, I actually didn't know they added a number onto that. You gain 50% haste for 3 seconds, you get exhausted for 40 seconds, and your stagger is 75% shorter. Your grunts from falling are 100% quieter. This perk is perfectly fine, maybe one of the most balanced exhaustion perks. Pretty much its only issue is the fact that on some maps it's kind of pointless. So I'd say for this, if anything, they need to rework some maps to add in more hills or just general drop downs to make this perk a bit more universally viable. Bardic Inspiration. While idle, use E to perform, empowering all survivors within 60 meters for up to 15 seconds. While you are performing, other survivors will see your aura and you roll a d20, and based on the number on the d20 you get different percentage bonuses to basic skill checks. So for this, I think the perk is fine with how it functions, but currently the trade-off of time taken to play out the whole song and the buff you get just isn't really worth it or aligned. So I'd say just buff these numbers up a little bit, maybe make a 20 like 5% and then scale it down from there, and I think the perk would be great. Obviously this is kind of one you have to see how it functions with the numbers. It's sort of hard to just pin a number and say, oh, that'd be better, but just buff the numbers a little bit and I think it would work out. Better than new. Whenever you finish healing another survivor until they take damage, they bless and cleanse 16% faster, they heal and unlock chests 16% faster too. So this one is another healing perk that is just outclassed by so many others. I think at minimum, a change for this perk could be to make it so these effects also apply onto you as the healer, because currently these things, they're just not worth running, I think. I think with perks like this too, a big reason why they're not so popular is because you as the person using the perk can't really see what your effect is on the game, because once you apply that effect onto your teammate, unless you're queuing with them, you don't really know what they're doing with those percentages or, you know, if they're really making the most of it. The other thing, of course, is that this doesn't apply to generators. It only applies to blessing and cleansing, healing, and unlocking chests, which overall aren't too useful. It's maybe decent at like countering like a hex build or something, but opening chests faster is like pointless. Healing 16% faster is, again, again, completely eclipsed by so many other perk amounts, like, I don't know, botany knowledge or something. So either buff these numbers, maybe buff the numbers and make it so it applies onto the healer as well. I think that's a pretty good change. Better together. While you're repairing a generator, other survivors see that generator's aura. Whenever the killer downs a survivor, you see the auras of all survivors for 30 seconds. So for this one, I think a key issue with it is the fact that survivors see the generator's aura and they don't see your aura as the person repairing the generator. Seeing a random aura, random generator aura suddenly flash up and appear is going to be very confusing for most solo queue players. If they see that appear, they're probably not going to know what it means. They're probably going to try and run toward it and see what it means, but you know, it could mean a number of things. It could be like, I don't know, Trail of Torment or whatever. So I think showing up the generator maybe and the survivor on it would be a better encouragement. And then also the secondary effect is quite nice, but I don't know, it doesn't feel substantial enough. I do think maybe there needs to be some kind of generator repair bonus on this too. But for one, just make the survivor aura appear alongside the generator aura. Bite the bullet. While healing, you and the healed survivor make no noises or grunts of pain. Whenever you miss a basic skill check, you lose only 1% progress. The killer is not alerted. So again, the issue with this one is the fact that there's so many better stealth or healing perks, so this just isn't worth running really. People tend to use it in very niche builds where they try and hide from the killer by going into a corner mid-chase and healing and going completely undetectable. That's pretty cool, but that's about all this perk does. I did have a recent video where I suggested making this perk into more of like a hyper stealth perk to separate it from perks like Iron Will, which already mask your grunts of pain a bit better. So make it so when you're healing, you actually go invisible. A bit like you did during the Black Banquet event, you had that invisible effect. Make it so survivors can go completely invisible. Maybe put a timer on it so you can't just like spam this thing. Give it like a 10-second timer. So you heal invisible for 10 seconds and then it has a cooldown or something. I don't know, something like that. But I think that would be a good way to actually separate it and give it a good ability that actually makes it worthwhile to run over something like Iron Will. Blast Mine. After repairing 40% of generators while next to a generator, use F to trap it for 120 seconds. All survivors see that generator's aura. When the killer damages the generator, the trap explodes, and they are stunned for 4 seconds, and everyone nearby looking at the detonation is blinded. So this perk, I think overall, is actually pretty fine. It's sort of a bit of a meme perk, but it's also a very slight game delay perk, and a bit of just like an FU to the killer, I think is how most people use it. Overall, I would say this is pretty fine. I would say it'd be nice if there was a bit more of a gameplay benefit though. Maybe say a small duration of hindered or something post the hit, like 10 seconds of hindered, so the killer's actually slowed somewhat post the kick, because oftentimes this just doesn't really do much for you, I think, other than it being funny. Blood Pact, the teamwork perk that was a teamwork perk before the teamwork perks existed. While you or the obsession are injured, you see the other's aura. Whenever you finish healing the obsession, or they finish healing you, while within 16 meters of each other, you both gain 7% haste. This is a utterly bizarre perk, and really bad, super niche, kind of funny, but the value you get from it is very minimal. Mainly because you're gaining 7% haste, but you have to remain within 16 meters of each other. This is a really silly stipulation, I think. It makes it almost impossible to keep this up. I think at minimum, it needs to be just make the radius wider, make it, I don't know, 24 meters or something, if this perk effect is going to remain intact. For this video, I'm not going to go for complete reworks, by the way. I'm going to look at what the perk is currently and try and sort of work with it. So I think make it like 24 meters, even like 32 meters, and I think it'd probably be fine. Also give it some kind of lingering effect post leaving this radius, maybe like 30 seconds, maybe even like 60 seconds. That maybe sounds a little bit too strong. But the amount of times this is going to activate is maybe what, like once or twice a game? I feel like it's not that bad. Blood Rush. Until all generators are completed, whenever you are unhooked for the next 60 seconds, while exhausted, use E to lose exhausted instantly. This is disabled by conspicuous actions. I would actually say this perk is fine as it currently is. It serves its own unique purpose. People tend to not use it very much, but I think the perk effect is fine. Boil Over. Super annoying perk. While carried by the killer, whenever the killer falls from at least 1.2 meters, you gain 33% of your current wheel progression. Your wiggle is 80% stronger, and the killer cannot see hooks within 60 meters. This is another perk I think is just fine. It's good for slightly countering and just throwing the killer off a bit, so yeah, it's fine. It's not as problematic as it used to be. Bond, another good example example of a solid perk that doesn't need to change. Within 36 meters, you see the other survivors' auras. Perfect. Boon Circle of Healing, going for a bit of a little generational run here. I think this is fine too. After blessing a totem and creating a boon, while healing without a medkit, everyone inside the boon radius heals 100% faster, and while injured, other survivors see everyone else's aura. So it's solid. Again, it's been OP in the past, it's fine now. Boon Dark Theory. After blessing a totem, everyone within the totem's range gains 3% haste. When leaving the range, this ends after 4 seconds. The problem with Dark Theory is the fact that 1, the percentage I think is way too low, and 2, and this is mainly because when you're within a boon, the radius is already pretty small, so gaining this smaller percentage of haste for such a small area makes it very hard to get value out of. It's not the same as when Made for this had 3% as well, because back then you could run anywhere all around the map. You know, you could run in a straight line, which is sort of where it was strongest. With Boon Dark Theory, it requires you to set up the boon and then also make value out of it in just that boon's radius. So that's sort of the problem. I think reasonably they could probably buff this up to like 5% and it'd probably be fine, I think. I mean, at least test it out. Otherwise, this boon is just, it's never going to get used. Boon Exponential. After blessing a totem, everyone within the boon's radius can recover 100% faster and can also fully recover. So this is sort of just like Boon Unbreakable. This is another perk I'd also say is probably just fine. It's already very niche, but the times when it does work, it's very powerful. So I think it's kind of struck that perfect balance. Not too popular a perk, but I think that's fine in this case. Boon Illumination. After blessing a totem, everyone within the boon's radius will see the auras of chests and also the auras of generators. The main problem with this one is the fact that the perk effect just isn't too strong, and the fact that you need to be within the boon's range to even get this to activate is a bit of a detriment when there's other perks you can run that don't require you to be in a boon range. I think a better effect would probably be to reverse it somewhat and make it so everything within the boon's radius gets illuminated. So everything within the boon radius is permanently lit up. So say there's a generator within the boon range, it gets lit up. There's a chest or whatever, that gets lit up too. And these are all just permanently visible for all of the survivors. Then maybe also make it so it can detect the killer. That makes it so when the killer goes into this boon radius, which isn't too large a radius to be fair, they're permanently lit up as well. I think that would make it actually quite worthwhile. Then maybe also keep the current effect too. Maybe make it both. I think that would make this perk genuinely pretty viable. Boon Shadow Step. After blessing a totem, everyone within the boon's range leaves no scratch marks, and their auras cannot be seen by the killer. This is another one that I actually think is fine, to be honest. It's sort of meant to be a support boon, and I think it actually does that pretty well, so I'm going to say it's fine. Borrowed Time is another perk that's a bit of a product of its time, but one that also I think is pretty much fine. After unhooking another survivor, they retain their unhook endurance for 10 seconds longer, and also their unhook haste for 10 seconds longer. This is like an extended anti-tunnel effect. I think it's pretty good. It does its job, it throws the killers off of their timings, and works pretty well I think, so it's fine. Botany Knowledge, another nice simple perk. You heal 50% faster. That's great. It's fine. Breakdown. Whenever you are unhooked, the hook breaks, then is repaired after 180 seconds. You see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. This is another perk I'd maybe say is fine as well, because the effect is very unique. There's not really any other perks that can do this, especially for 180 seconds. The only thing is, I feel like breaking just one hook often doesn't do too much. Equally, I think buffing these numbers or making it like permanent or something is maybe a bit powerful. Maybe making it permanent though, as like a one-use thing, like when you're unhooked for the first time, that hook gets permanently broken. Maybe that'll be okay. Am I crazy there? Probably a little bit. Probably a little bit. Yeah, probably a little bit. Yeah, that's my idea. Breakout. This perk is just awful. Within 5 meters of a carried survivor, you gain 10% haste, and the carried survivor wiggles 25% faster. This perk is so bad, honestly, and I don't really know why you'd run this. I don't know how you'd even fix this, to be honest, without making it too OP, especially if like a whole team ran this and they could stack it together. I think that's why the numbers are like so low, because otherwise it could be very, very punishing for the killer. maybe the one thing you could do is you could widen the range from 5 meters to something like 7.5, maybe 10. Maybe that's a little bit too much though. I think something like that would be fine. That could work out probably decently. It is meant to be a niche perk at the end of the day, and this is also the only perk that does this kind of thing. So yeah, maybe it's fine. Buckle up. When healing a down survivor, you both see the killer's aura. Whenever you finish healing a down survivor or fully recover, the survivor gains 50% haste for 5 seconds. The survivor leaves no scratch marks for 5 seconds. So this one got pretty heavily neutered when they removed the endurance status effect, and nowadays it's not really run by anyone. It's pretty useless, I'd say. And the reason is, well, there's no endurance effect. That's sort of the kicker here. Maybe an alternate could be that you add in a much larger haste effect, maybe make it closer to something like sprint bursts numbers, like I think it's 150%. That can make it quite worthwhile, because then that means you do get away, but you're also not guaranteed to survive, a bit like with endurance. So maybe that's better. Maybe make it like 150% for like 3 seconds, or maybe even like 2 or something lower like that. I feel like that could work alright. Built to last. While holding a depleted item, after hiding in a locker for 10 seconds, it is recharged to 99%. Each time you recharge an item this way, it recharges 33% fewer charges. This perk is actually really good, and maybe even debatably needs a nerf. People don't really use it though, which I think is why it's probably going to hold up as fine. I think 1 recharge though is enough already, because you can use this on like medkits and toolboxes, and it can be pretty powerful, honestly. So yeah, I think it's completely fine. Calm Spirit, maybe controversially as well, I'm going to also say it's fine. You do not scare crows or scream, and you blessing cleanse totems and unlock chests silently, but 30% slower. The only thing with this one I'd say is probably just remove that 30% slower. I don't really get why that's there. Otherwise, fine. Camaraderie, another perk that's very slept on. When you are struggling on hook, when another survivor gets within 60 meters, the timer is paused for 34 seconds. Again, it's another one where this perk activates sort of on another person, and so, or like with use of another person. So oftentimes, I think people fail to see the effects of it, kind of. This perk is really strong though. I mean, it's sort of similar to like Reassurance. Speaking of, actually, I've just remembered that perk. I suppose that's why this perk is kind of pointless as well. That perk just does what this one does, but better, I would say. Yeah, that's kind of a problem. I don't know how you could really change this one to make it more worthwhile, unless you just made it so the number was considerably higher or something. Or maybe even alternately you nerf Reassurance or something like that. I don't know. That's kind of a tough one. What do you think for this one? I'm actually not too sure what to do with Camaraderie. Champion of Light, my beloved. While you are using a flashlight, you gain 50% haste. Whenever you blind the killer, they gain 20% hindered for 6 seconds. Cooldown 40 seconds. This is another really fun perk that I think is completely fine. Change of plan. When the trial starts, you earn 2 tokens. While hiding in a locker and holding a non-event toolbox, use F and spend 1 token to transform your toolbox and add-ons onto a medkit of the same rarity with 100% charges and random add-ons of the same rarity. This is another I think isn't really used, but it's actually fine for what it does, especially because it recharges your recharges your item as well when it changes it. Like, yeah, this is pretty strong actually, and it doesn't even take that long in the lock. You just have to press something. So yeah, people should probably just use this a little bit more, honestly. Chemtrap, here we go. After repairing 20% of generators while next to a drop pallet, use F to trap it for 60 seconds. All survivors see that pallet's aura for that time. When the killer breaks that pallet, the trap explodes and they gain 50% hindered for 4 seconds. So again, the main problem with this is the fact that the chem trap is this huge, like, you can even see it on the little perk icon. It's just this massive thing on top of the pallet. Just make it a little bit smaller. Make it so like it's actually like kind of hidden, you know. It's meant to be kind of sneaky, isn't it, by the perk's intent, I would assume. So just make it a little bit smaller. Clairvoyance. Whenever you bless or cleanse a totem while not holding an item, use M2 and for up to 12 seconds and within 64 meters, see the auras of chests, exit switches, generators, hatch, and hooks. Another one I think that is completely fine. It's a trade-off for your item. The only thing that's maybe a bit of a downside is the fact that you first need to bless or cleanse a totem. That's maybe, I don't know, maybe this could be charged in a slightly different way, because I do think it's a little bit annoying to have to do that, I think, at the start of every trial. So maybe adjust this. Maybe just make it so during the trial you only have 12 seconds to use this perk, you know, or something like that. But it doesn't require the activation of cleansing or blessing a totem. Clean Break. Whenever you finish healing another survivor while being healed by another survivor, use E to gain Broken. After 60 seconds, if you are not downed, you are instantly healed. This one, again, is kind of fine. It's just the fact that it also kind of nerfs you in the process process, maybe this needs some kind of additional protection to be more worthwhile. Like say during the 60 seconds, your like grunts of pain are also silent, or something like that, I think, just to make it a bit more viable so you can actually make this work in your favor. Because most of the time it's probably just going to be little bit more efficient if you just heal instead of using this. So that's kind of the toss up. Come and Get Me, another Rick perk that's really bad. All of his perks are like really bad, by the way. Whenever you unhook a survivor while crouched and idle, use E to have injured and down survivors within 24 meters make no grunts of pain, leave no pools of blood, and leave no scratch marks. And then you also scream, and the killer sees your aura for 5 seconds. So the idea of this is you're trying to draw the killer's attention to you, and you're trying to remove the attention from all the other people. The problem is, usually killers generally don't care. Even if they hear you screaming and they see your aura, a lot of the time they're going to be busy chasing someone or just simply doing something else, and so they just don't really bother. That's the core problem with this perk. And also because a lot of people using this, if you're playing with a team, as in like you're playing in a Swift, you're not going to need this perk anyway because you can just communicate. If you're playing in solo queue, then a lot of the time people aren't going to run this because they don't really care much about their teammates. So that's sort of the problem with this perk. I think making it so you draw even more attention to yourself, like I had an idea a while back where this perk makes it so you repeatedly scream over and over, a bit like with Scene Partner, until the killer chases you, which I understand would be a little bit annoying, but I think at least that plays into the idea of the perk a little bit more and would actually make it kind of effective. Conviction. After you finish healing one other survivor while downed with at least 25% recovery, use E to recover instantly. You gain Broken, then after 30 seconds you are downed instantly. I think this perk is fine. It's a unique little fun perk. I think it's fine. Corrective Action. When the trial starts, you earn 3 tokens up to 5. Whenever you hit a great basic skill check, earn 1 token. Whenever another survivor misses a basic skill check, spend 1 token. The missed skill check becomes a good, and you see these survivors aura for 6 seconds, so you can see who messed the skill check up. I think this perk is meant to be for when you're teaching your friend to play the game, and you can help them out with their missed skill checks and also identify when they're missing them. So I think this perk is fine. It's not meant to be for your like player with 5,000 hours or whatever, so I think people complaining about this one being reworked is like, nah, it's fine. It's not meant for you. Counterforce. This is an interesting perk. When the trial starts, you earn 1 token. Whenever you cleanse a totem, earn 1 token, then you see the aura of the farthest totem for 14 seconds. For each token, you cleanse totems 25% faster. So this is sort of like a progressive, faster totem cleansing, where for each totem you cleanse the next one faster, and you also see the next totem. So it lets you sort of strategically take out all the totems on the map if you're like pretty efficient with it. This is actually kind of strong, but the only times you really need to do this is when the killer has a full hex build. It's also super inefficient because it shows you the farthest totem, which is just a bit of a detriment and time waste. Maybe they could just make it like a random totem even, like it just picks a random totem. So it could be the farthest, or it could also be the closest. I think just something like that, because at the moment it's just so time consuming to have to go, slingshotting across the map side to side. Cross-examination. This was a bit of a hot topic when it first came out because it activated even during chase. Nowadays it doesn't, and this perk makes it so killers leave behind these sort of light marks on the ground behind them, and when you run on these light marks, it gives you elusive, which lasts for 10 seconds and then ends 5 seconds after you stop touching the marks. So currently, nowadays, I'd say it's fine. On release, definitely wasn't fine. Cut Loose. Super weird perk. While chased by the killer, whenever you medium or fast vault for up to 6 seconds, your medium and fast vaults are silent. During that time, whenever you medium or fast vault, the timer is reset. This used to have a much weirder perk effect before. Now it's still pretty weird. It kind of makes it so you can vault and then your subsequent vaults for 6 seconds are also silent, which means you can like kind of mind game sometimes and stuff like that. I think maybe the better thing here to do would just be that you vault, your first vault is loud, and then for the duration of the rest of the chase, or maybe until you get hit or something, your vaults are silent. I think that would probably be the better rework, so I'm going to say that for that one. Dance With Me. Whenever you fast exit a locker, medium vault or fast vault, you leave no scratch marks for 5 seconds, cooldown of 15. I think this could use a little bit of a buff, maybe make it 7.5, maybe make it 10, maybe try out some different numbers here. I think currently 5 seconds is a little bit too low, especially because it's quite easy to track so long as you've got line of sight, and 5 seconds isn't very long. Dark Sense. Whenever a generator is completed, when the killer gets within 24 meters of you, you see their aura for 10 seconds. I think this should actually go back to how it worked before. I actually didn't realize this had even been reworked. worked, where when you complete a generator, you see the killer's aura for 10 seconds. I think that was a slightly better effect for tracking and just general information. I don't think this is quite as useful, but maybe I'm missing something here, so let me know about that one. Dead Hard. Whenever you're unhooked, while injured and running, use E. You gain endurance for 0.5 seconds and exhausted for 40. So this is like a perk that's been very strong for a long time and basically lets you tank a hit. I think it's fine in its current iteration. The most you could do maybe is like shorten the window even more, but I think even now it's probably fine. I think it'd be maybe a little bit silly to nerf the window, so I'm not going to say that. Deadline. Now this perk is like truly awful. While injured, basic skill checks are 10% more likely to appear and appear in random places. Whenever you miss a basic skill check, you lose 50% less progress. This is just like so odd. I don't know like what's like the benefit of this even. It's more of a detriment because of all the random appearing not scratch marks, skill checks in different places. You do get more though, which I suppose is the buff. I think for this, make the percentage of them appearing higher, so like 25%, and the appear in random places I think should stay because it's a fun quirk and mechanic. But yeah, the percentage of them appearing needs to definitely be higher. Maybe even add on a percentage bonus as well. Deception is another perk I'm going to say is probably just fine, as probably one of the most fun and interesting deception perks in the game. So this lets you fake a locker entry, making the doors of the locker flap open, and it also gives you a bit of stealth as well after doing this, so you leave no pools of blood and no scratch marks. I think that's pretty good. Maybe they could also make it so you make no sounds entirely. Maybe that could be a little small buff. I think it's probably just fine, honestly. I'm not sure what you do to this. Decisive Strike, again, another perk that's been through so many changes. I think nowadays, probably just fine. This makes it so after you've been unhooked, for the next 60 seconds, if the killer picks you up, you're able to stab them and stun them for 4 seconds, and you also become the obsession in the process. This is fine. It's an anti-talent perk nowadays, purely and simply. People can still sometimes use it a little bit aggressively, but at the end of the day, they're kind of just wasting time if they do that. So yeah, I think it's fine. Deja Vu, maybe one of the best survivor perks we've had from the very start of the game. This lets you see the auras of the 3 generators closest to each other, and it also lets you repair them 6% faster. This is like the master of breaking 3 gens, so this is completely fine as well. Maybe even because it's so passive and free, it could actually use like a slight nerf, maybe like make it like 4 or 5%, I don't know. Deliverance. Once per trial, when you safely unhook another survivor, you can unhook yourself. When you unhook yourself this way, you gain broken for 60 seconds. Another one I think is fine. It's just super annoying with how it works and how whenever you run this, you're always the first to be hooked. So yeah, I think the perk effect is completely fair and fine. It's more just like it's annoying if you do get hooked first. Maybe they could add some kind of additional effect to try and maybe they could add in like a base additional unhook speed for other survivors of like 10%, you know, just some like kind of like mini passive to make it so it doesn't feel like a complete waste if you get hooked first. Desperate Measures. This is another one that's actually quite slept on in my opinion. Is actually quite strong. For each injured, downed or hooked survivor, you heal 20% faster and you unhook 20% faster. Actually, this is quite good. It means overall you can get up to 60% on all of these, or actually 80% I guess if it includes you. I'm assuming it does. So yeah, this is quite good actually. I also didn't realize they buffed that. I thought that was still 16%, but 20%, that's really great. Detective's Hunch. When a generator is completed for 20 seconds and within 64 meters, you see the auras of chests, generators, and totems. Again, a little bit niche, I think, partly because of the range. 64 meters is a little bit restrictive. I honestly don't think it'd be too much of a detriment. It wouldn't be too OP if they just made this infinite range. I think putting ranges on things even is a little outdated nowadays, so maybe remove the range cap. Distortion. When the trial starts and after being chased for 15 seconds, you earn 1 token up to 2. While not downed, whenever the killer attempts to see your aura, spend 1 token, then for the next 12 seconds, the killer cannot see your aura and you leave no scratch marks. So this perk was quite controversial for a while because it was very powerful. Nowadays, it does feel a little underpowered, I do think, but at the same time, if they buff it again, it's back to being a little too strong. So I think its current state now is probably fine. A little bit more niche, but probably okay. Maybe they can make it 3 tokens again, or something like that, I don't know. Diversion. Pebble. After hiding for 20 seconds within the killer's terror radius, while crouched and idle, use E to throw a pebble 20 meters away. The killer is alerted and the pebble leaves scratch marks. So this is another one I think would work really well as just a base game mechanic. There should just be pebbles around around the trial in my opinion, like in the trial grounds that you can pick up off the floor and you can toss as a survivor to make a little distraction. I think that'd be a really fun base game mechanic. So I think just melt this perk down, make it into a base game mechanic. Do No Harm, another healing perk. While healing another survivor, for each hook state they have, you heal 50% faster. Whenever you hit a great basic skill check, you gain 3% more progress. This is another one that's like actually quite good. I just think it's eclipsed again by perks like Botany, because perks like Botany, you get a permanent 50% healing bonus. So why use this and get the 50% this way? You do get 100% when they're two hooked, but oftentimes I think it's overall just a little bit more efficient to have to have Botany knowledge on. Maybe make this stand out by giving an even larger bonus compared to Botany, like make it like 60% stacking to 120 or something. I don't know. It needs some kind of additional benefit over Botany, I think, so that'd be the way to set it apart. Dramaturgy, really fun perk, and I think completely fine. This perk lets you run and gives you sort of a random bonus based on what you get. You can go faster, you can become exposed, you can get an item. It's really cool, it's fine. Alright, next up we've got Duty of Care. While healthy, whenever you take a protection hit, other survivors within 12 meters gain 25% haste for 6 seconds. 60 would be crazy. This one I think is probably fine considering it is very strong in a coordinated team. I think if you try to buff this too much or alter this too much, it would end up becoming a little bit too busted for those coordinated teams. Kind of a niche perk though as it stands, I would say. Empathic Connection. You heal other survivors 35% faster, injured survivors see your aura. So this has been buffed up to how it was before. I do still think it needs a higher heal percentage though ideally, because again currently something like Botany just eclipses this. It would also help greatly if you could see their aura too, but that's what Empathy does. So maybe even just merge the effects of Empathy and Empathic Connection and make it so you can see survivors, they can see you, and you heal them faster. That'd be pretty good. Speaking of, we've got Empathy next, which shows you the auras of injured survivors within 128 meters. Again, I think either merge this with Empathic Connection, or at the very least make this infinite range. This is basically infinite range, but I don't quite know why they add the 128 meters. I think it's a bit of a useless stipulation. Extrasensory Perception. After crouching for 4 seconds, you see auras in an expanding radius up to 44 meters. You gain elusive and you gain oblivious. When you stop crouching or after 11 seconds, you gain a cooldown of 40 seconds. Honestly, I think maybe just remove the initial need to crouch for 4 seconds and maybe just make it so when you crouch, you see these things and then you get the cooldown after 11 seconds. I think that's fine. I think having to crouch for 4 seconds makes this kind of pointless, honestly. Exaltation. This is a super cool perk that again, no one really uses. Whenever you pallet stun the killer, your item rarity is upgraded to the next tier if possible. If the item was upgraded, it recharges 75% of its charges. Cooldown 20 seconds. So the idea of this, I guess, is to try and bring in like a yellow flashlight or something and then slowly upgrade as the match goes on. It can be like kind of useful. It's mainly like a fun perk, I think. I think the problem with this one as well is the fact that often people will just bring in the best flashlight or best toolbox or best medkit anyway, so there's often not a point really even to try and get this to activate. So it's super niche in that way, but I do like that it exists and I wouldn't want to see it removed. Maybe just make the recharge rate, maybe just make that 100 as just like a baseline. Eyes of Belmont. Whenever a generator is completed, you see the killer's aura for 3 seconds. Whenever you see the killer's aura for a duration, it is 2 seconds longer. So this is kind of like Lethal Pursuer for survivors. I think it's like just fine. I do think maybe they could buff these numbers a little bit, maybe add on a few additional seconds for when you see the killer or something like that, and maybe extend the initial effect as well out to like 5 seconds or something. Fast Track, another one that's been kind of controversial fairly recently. Whenever you unhook another survivor, you earn 1 token up to 3. While repairing, whenever you hit a great basic skill check, spend all tokens. For each token spent, the generator gains 5% permanent progress. I think this is now completely fine, honestly, in the way it functions. It was very OP before. I think this is fine. Finesse, another pretty healthy perk, I'd say. While healthy, you vault 20% faster with a cooldown of 30 seconds. This is fine. It's got a cool animation. Nice. 5 moves ahead. This was one that people thought was going to be very OP when it was announced in the PTB. When you're in the killer's terror radius or chased by the killer, you see the auras of the 5 closest pallets and windows. After you drop a pallet, you start moving 50% sooner, and you also get get a cooldown of 30 seconds. So this is kind of like a blend of Windows, but also a slightly faster palette drop, or at least a faster movement post-drop. So overall, it's a pretty good blend of both worlds. I think you're still better off just using Windows, completely honestly, but I think it's nice as a contender to that perk, so I think leave it as is. Fixated, another perk I would not change, honestly. While walking, you gain 20% haste. You see your own scratch marks. That's great. Flashbang, after repairing 40% of a generator, while hiding in a locker, use E to craft a flashbang, and this gives you a flashbang which you can drop on the ground and stun the killer a bit like a firecracker. It can lead to some fun moments and saves and stuff. I think this is also perfectly fine. I'm not really sure I'd even change that, so yeah, I think it's fine. Flip-flop. While downed, whenever the killer picks you up, 50% of your recovery progress is added to your wiggle progress, up to 50%. This perk can be a little unhealthy at times, considering that it's basically only run in conjunction with power struggle and different perks like that allow you to down yourself on a pallet and sort of instantly save yourself. So I would say, I don't know how you adjust that really. It's just a bit of a weird perk in a weird spot. It's like kind of meant to be an anti-slug perk, I guess, because it gives you the bonus of having more wiggle if you're left on the ground. But obviously there's just better alternatives like Unbreakable. So it only really works functionally, I think, in conjunction with something like Power Struggle. So I don't know. Maybe this is another one you could just make like base kit, you know, as an anti-slug measure. Maybe that's a better anti-slug measure. I don't know. What do you think of this perk? I'm not even sure what to say about that one. Flow state. Whenever a generator is completed, earn 1 token up to 5. For each token, you bless and cleanse 10% faster, you heal 10% faster, and you unhook survivors 10% faster. This is sort of meant to be like reverse fire up, where you do things faster as the game goes on. I think overall this is fine. It's maybe not the best, a bit like fire up. Maybe it could use an additional like 5% on each of these or something. I don't know, something like that. Fogwise, a perk people surprisingly don't use too much, considering it's actually pretty good, I think. While repairing, whenever you hit a great basic skill check, you see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. This could maybe be buffed, honestly, to just make it good skill checks. Maybe that's a little bit wild, but this is a great tool, honestly, for tracking the killer, whilst also doing the objective, which is quite healthy, I think. And so I think that wouldn't be so bad. Skill checks aren't that frequent, right? So I think it'd be fine. For the people, this is another perk with a good trade-off, in my opinion. While healthy and healing another survivor without a medkit, you can use E to heal them instantly. You take damage, you gain broken, and you become the obsession. So you basically transfer a health state onto a survivor, onto another survivor. And yeah, I think this is probably fine, honestly. I don't know what you'd adjust with that. Friendly competition. Whenever you finish repairing a generator with at least one other survivor, survivors who finish repairing it repair 5% faster, 120 seconds. I think this maybe needs to be a slightly higher percentage. It sounds quite high in theory, but realistically, if you put it to the test and you actually try and get value from this, you usually only get about like 3 seconds bonus speed or something when repairing a generator. Genuinely, I think this would be fine if you added on like 10%. If you made it like 10% or even like 15, I think it wouldn't be as bad as it sounds. Maybe 15 is too high. 10 maybe though. I think 10 would be fine. 10 would clear. Ghost notes. While you have exhausted, your scratch marks disappear 50% faster. You lose exhausted 10% faster. I think maybe even buff this up a bit more, make it just so you have no scratch marks when exhausted, and you also recover exhausted faster. I think that'd be fine. This is a perk dedicated to removing exhaustion. I think if it's going to do that, it needs to do it a lot better than it currently is, so buff that thing. Hardened. This is a kind of a strange perk. When you bless or cleanse a totem and unlock a chest, whenever you would scream, you see the killer's aura for 5 seconds instead. This weirdly somehow is like a worse calm spirit, I think. And you still scream, don't you, I think, when you do this? Or maybe you don't scream. I think you don't scream, actually. No. Yeah, this is really weird, though. Again, stifled very much so by the fact that you need to cleanse a totem and open a chest to make it work out. I just don't see the value in that. I think that's such a ridiculous activation. It really slows you down. So yeah, maybe if they just made it one or the other. So once you've blessed or cleansed a totem or opened a chest, then you get this effect. Then I think it could maybe be pretty functional. Still kind of niche because it's based on screaming only, which is like, again, seeing the killer's aura for 5 seconds compared to a perk like Alert or something, it's just so weak in comparison. So yeah, I don't know. It needs to do more than this, really. Head On, another fun perk I think is completely fine. After hiding in a lock for 3 seconds, you're able to fast exit and stun the killer when they cross by you. This perk is completely fine. It's a fun perk. Hope, I think, is also another perk that's pretty strong. When all generators are completed, you gain 5% haste. It's sort of an endgame perk where it buffs you up and it buffs your speed in the endgame. This is fine. Hyperfocus, another perk I think is fine. It works a little bit complicated. Whenever you hit a great basic skill check, you earn 1 token up to 6. For each token, basic skill checks appear 4% more often and spin 4% faster. And whenever you hit a great, it gives 30% more progress. So I think that's 30% of the additional 1% a great skill check would usually give you. So for each token up to 6, you're gaining an additional 0.3%, I think is what it gives you. So I think overall by the end, if you've got max stacks, you're getting 3.4% bonus per great skill check hit, which is quite substantial. That's 3.4 generated charges, which is quite a lot. So yeah, this is fine, I think. Inner Focus, this is sort of like reverse fixated. Whenever the killer damages another survivor, you see the killer's aura for 10 seconds, and you see the other survivor's scratch marks. So it's sort of like a reverse version of fixated. It's not quite as useful, I think, seeing other people's scratch marks, being completely honest. Again, if you're a team, you can kind of communicate. If you're solo queue, probably don't care too much about your teammates anyway. However, I do think it still fills a niche, and I like that this perk exists and offers this ability, so I think keep it the same. Inner Strength, a perk that used to be very favored, and I don't really see it anymore. Whenever you cleanse a totem while injured and not broken, after hiding in a locker for 8 seconds, you become healthy instantly. I think this perk is also fine. It's a decent trade-off. It takes about the same amount of time to cleanse a totem as it does to get in a locker and heal, so yeah, I think it's fine. It's fine as like a self-heal mechanic. Has a fine activation, powerful effect, so I think it's alright. Invocation Treacherous Crows. Oh boy. This is debatably the worst perk in the game, maybe the worst perk in DBD history, even, I would go so far to say. This perk allows you to do an invocation in the basement, and upon completing it, it makes it so whenever the killer scares a crow, while a survivor is in their terror radius, all survivors see the killer's aura for 2 seconds, and this makes you broken for the entire trial as a result. This is such an awful effect for permanently being broken, and a 60-second duration to even activate this thing. This is insanely bad. I think a fun way to implement this, which also plays into the idea of the perk as well, of having crows that are sort of like traitorous and they're working with the survivors, is to actually make it so, well, for one, it doesn't have to only be activated when a survivor is in the killer's terror radius. I think it should just be permanent. And so whenever the killer disrupts a crow, all the survivors in the trial see their aura for like 5 seconds, say. I think that's a much better mechanic that allows you to track the killer when they're not in chase, because currently this perk kind of tracks the killer during chase, which isn't very useful, especially for the person who's using the perk Treacherous Crows. So I don't really get that. But make it so it's map wide, it doesn't require any like terror radius or anything silly like that, and it makes it so the crows basically track the killer position for you. I think that'd be pretty cool. Weaving Spiders, on the other hand, I would say is a pretty fair trade-off. This is an invocation too, so it takes 60 seconds to activate in the basement, and upon doing so, it makes all survivors gain a permanent 10 charges, which means they take, 10% less to repair them, essentially. And this is fine. I think that's a pretty powerful effect. It's pretty solid. Nice. Iron Will. While injured and not exhausted, your grunts of pain are 100% quieter. Now, this is strong, but it's been trialed as weaker. It's had like 75% quieter in the past and stuff like that. It's just, it falls apart when it's anything lower than 100, basically. So this is fine as is. It is strong, but it's fine as is, I think. Kindred. This is another perk that's been around for a while, but is strong and fair in my opinion. While you're hooked, all survivors see each other's auras, while the killer is within 60 meters of the hook. While another survivor is hooked, you see the auras of other survivors. When the killer is within 60 meters of the hook survivor, you see the killer's aura. This is fine. It's great tracking, also great with open-handed, which we've not discussed that one yet, have we? No. Okay, well, we'll get to that. Last Stand, perks I don't even remember. After hiding for 90 seconds within the killer's tear radius, when you fast vault once per trial, stun the killer for 3 seconds if they're within 2.5 meters. Oh wait, no, I do remember this perk. I don't remember the name though. Yeah, this perk is fine. So this perk actually lets you stun the killer using a vault, which can kind of lead to some fun moments and also even some saves, I would say, from the killer's shoulders. So this one's actually kind of fine, I think. I didn't remember it from the name though. Yeah. A lot of the later perks, I think anything post like Alien and the perk names, I just don't remember. Leader, a pretty old perk at this point as it came out with Dwight in the launch of the game. Within 10 meters of you, other survivors cleanse totems 30% faster, heal, open exit gates, sabotage, unhook survivors, and unlock chests 30% faster. So it's a good sort of like team buffing perk. People tend not to use this as much as well. Again, because it's another one of those perks that sort of works on other people. It doesn't work on you. So it's sort of often hard to gauge the effect of how well it's working. So I think it's fine. Maybe they could even buff these up to like 50% or something. Just really pump those numbers up. It's mainly used honestly for other people unhooking you, but then also for opening the exit gates in the end game. That's generally like the 2 times it's most useful, I'd say. But I think those numbers could be buffed. Left Behind, maybe one of the worst perks in the game. I think certainly one of the most unhealthy because it gets people to sort of play for the hatch, which is just never really a good idea. When all other survivors are dead, while within 32 meters of the hatch, you see its aura. Yeah, this one is sort of a product of its time back when the hatch used to be a bit more significant and a bit more of a, I don't know, a gameplay consideration, where nowadays it's sort of just like a survivor pity mechanic. I feel like maybe they could even just make this like, I mean, you can kind of hear the hatch anyway, can't you? I'd even just debate like remove this perk or just rework it entirely into something else. Lend a Hand, another slightly controversial one recently. Whenever you bless or cleanse one totem while healing another survivor and only once per survivor, use F to give them 4 permanent healing charges. This I think is actually perfectly fine. Giving someone 4 charges is like knocking off 25% of the heal they have, but having this activate through a totem anyway, I think is a pretty fair trade-off. It takes a while to break or cleanse a totem, or bless or cleanse, sorry, a totem. So I think this is a fine trade-off. Light-footed, while healthy and running, your footsteps are silent to the killer. Whenever you do a fast action, the cooldown is 10 seconds. I think this needs to be a bit like Iron Will, and it needs to just be a bit simplified and make it so whenever running, your footsteps are silent to the killer, and that should be the end of it. Iron Will makes your engine noises completely silent. I don't see why this perk couldn't make your footsteps just silent the entire time. They would be very OP together, it's true, but Iron Will is already OP alone, so at least try it out, I think. Imagine a light-footed meta, that'd be wild. Lightweight, your scratch marks disappear 5 seconds faster and appear more spread out. This one, again, it's fine, I just don't think people really use it because there's better things like completely removing scratch marks or just being silent with Iron Will, things like that. I think that's why people don't use this really. So, I don't know, maybe you could make them disappear even faster, or you don't leave them at all, but I mean, that's too much. I don't know. This is another one where it's just, there's so many perks and there's so many little effects. Maybe this needs to be blended with another perk, potentially. Possibly. Lithe. Whenever you medium or fast vault, you gain 50% haste for 3 seconds. You gain exhausted for 40 seconds. So I think maybe slightly controversial. I think debatably this could be nerfed somewhat. Maybe also buffed though at the same time. So instead of, I think, such a large haste bonus of 50%, it could probably be closer to like 35, just because this one is one of the most controllable exhaustion perks, and it's also one that can often give you the biggest advantage in a chase, I would say, because you can control when you use it. So I honestly think making this like 35% haste wouldn't be such a bad thing. Maybe you could make it like 25% haste, but then you make it 4 seconds or something. I don't know if that even makes it lower, to be fair, overall, but I think a lower increased speed over a longer duration would be a lot fairer for this perk, because it would also give slower characters, I think, a slightly better chance. Low Profile, the Feet perk. When all other survivors are downed or hooked for 90 seconds, you make no grunts of pain, you leave no pools of blood, and you leave no scratch marks. This one, again, it's a bit like Left Behind. It's kind of like a bit of a selfish perk. It's kind of meant to be a clutch perk, actually, in fairness. But the amount of times when this realistically activates is so niche. To then also put on a 90-second timer just feels very, very, very pointless. So again, at minimum, just make it permanent. When everyone else is down, you just get all of these effects. And maybe even tack on an additional heal speed to down survivors or something like that, you know, if that's meant to be the purpose. If this perk is meant to fill this like super niche scenario where everyone else is down and you're not, then this perk needs to absolutely excel at doing this. Otherwise, there's just like no point in ever running this thing. So either make it like super OP in that one situation or rework it somehow to do something completely different, because that's super niche. Lucky Break. While injured for up to 60 seconds, you leave no pools of blood and you leave no scratch marks. For each second spent healing another survivor, recharge the duration by 1 second. I think maybe they could just uncap this, which maybe sounds a little bit OP, but like how often are you realistically healing for? I think uncapping this from 60 seconds would honestly be fine. It says up to 60 seconds. I think this should be able to overflow, because again, currently it's not that OP, I would say. People don't use this all too much. I think it'd be fine. Lucky Star, one of the most bizarre perks in the game, I have to say. While hiding in a locker, you make no grunts of pain, and when you exit the locker for 30 seconds, you see the aura of the closest generator, you see the aura of other survivors, you make no grunts of pain, and you leave no pools of blood, and there's a 25-second cooldown. It's such a weird perk, and it's such a weird activation, I think, where you need to like go into a locker. You are silent in a locker, which is quite good. That's quite a good effect for stealthing, but I do think it's rather bizarre, and no one really uses it. I'm not sure how you'd really buff this though, honestly. Maybe tacking on like seeing the killer or something. Honestly, I just think the reason people don't use this is because it requires you going into a locker, which often feels like just kind of a pointless mechanic. Maybe they can make it more like Deception, where you can, I don't know, like you can fake entering a locker, or you can just tap a locker and you get these effects or something. I don't know. What do you think of this one? I'm not too sure what to do for this one. Made for this. Remember when this thing was meta? Well, not so much anymore. I do think it's serviceable nowadays though, and it's actually completely fine. So while injured, whenever you finish healing another survivor, you gain endurance for 10 seconds. While you have deep wounds, you gain 3% haste. This is fine in my opinion. It's sort of like the best of both worlds, honestly. Post the made for this meta, they made the most of it, I think, and it works out now. I think, yeah, it's pretty solid. Metal of Man, maybe the perk that annoys me the most out of all of these weird activations. This perk requires 3 protection hits to activate. That is ridiculous. 3 protection hits, what the? And then this then allows you to basically tank a hit, allows you to shrug off a hit after you've done this. And this is just so not worth it, especially when there's perks, you know, like Dead Hard, which is so much easier to activate. 3 protection hits feels wild, honestly. Even like 2, it wasn't so great still. I think this would honestly be better activated via like some kind of altruistic action like a heal, or even make it so instead of 3 protection hits, it's like 3 altruistic actions. So you can activate this via unhooking someone 3 times, healing someone fully 3 times, taking a protection hit. You know, any of these things can maybe contribute, because then I could see it actually being pretty worthwhile. I just think at the moment, this is just so not worth it being 3 protection hits. And it used to be way too OP as well, because in the original version of this perk, this was actually meta at one point when it first came out. And at one point, it required, was it 2 or 3? I think it was 3 actually. It was 3 regular hits to activate, which made it way too OP, because it meant everyone basically got a free shrug off hit multiple times a game. It was kind of ridiculous. So let's not make it like that, but maybe make it altruism based rather than only protection hit based, because that's kind of silly, I think. Mirrored Illusion. This is a super fun perk. After repairing 20% of generators while next to a chest, exegate switch, generator or totem, use F to create a static illusion for 60 seconds. So this makes like a fuzzy illusion of your character sort of on the generator or on the thing you're doing, and it's really fun and great and everything, but there's like basically no point to it. At most, you buy yourselves a quick moment because the killer swings at the fake thing and they waste 3 seconds. Sometimes killers can mistake the illusion from far away, and they'll go over to a generator super far away. This is such a rare niche circumstance that it's so not worth it running this. I think there needs to be some kind of benefit to tricking the killer. Like say if they swing at your static illusion, then you gain, I don't know, some kind of aura reveal on them, or you nerf them in some way, like you afflict them with blindness or something. I don't know. Something needs to happen as a result of it, because at the moment it's sort of just like, it's funny, but like, what's the point? Moment of Glory. After you rummage or unlock 2 chests. I don't understand why these are activations. Rummaging or unlocking 2 chests is... While not broken, when you become injured, you gain broken. After After 60 seconds, if you are not downed, you are instantly healed. Again, I think for like healing based perks like this, make it like altruism tied rather than making it tied to chests, which is just like, again, there's only 3 chests in a trial. There's three chests. There's only 3 chests at base in a trial. Making you have to unlock 2 or rummage 2 is silly. It's a silly mechanic. Stupid. No mither. Haha, funny perk. When the trial starts, you become injured, then you gain broken, your grunts of pain are 100% quieter, you leave no pools of blood, you recover 25% faster, and you can fully recover. This perk used to be like really terrible because it gave you like no bonuses at all. I think it's fine now. You have inbuilt iron will, you leave no pools of blood, you recover 25% faster, and you can fully recover. They're all things that I think even this out. It's meant to be a challenge perk. It's not meant to buff you still, but I do think they're fair trade-offs as a challenge, so I think that's fine. No One Left Behind, honestly, a perk that's super slept on. This perk is actually really good. You heal 100% faster, you unhook survivors 100% faster, and when you unhook someone, they gain 10% haste, and this is all in the end game, I should mention. And you see the auras of other survivors. This is a very, very strong endgame perk, and it fulfills its niche very well, and for that reason, I do think it's fine. It gives you tons of huge, notable, worthwhile bonuses. This is a perk actually that a lot of other niche perks could learn from. Other niche perks need things like this where it just gives you 100% of something, you know, it just gives you a huge bonus. We need more of this, I think. Objective Obsession, another perk that used to be very overpowered back in the day, but nowadays is not so great. It's more of a detriment. Whenever you have the obsession, every 30 seconds the killer sees your aura for 3 seconds. While the killer sees your aura, you see their aura, so you see each other's auras. You cleanse totems faster, you heal faster, and repair faster by 6%. So again, I feel like maybe for this one, there needs to be a bit of a bonus to drawing so much attention to yourself, and I think those numbers at minimum, I think could probably be buffed to like 12%. Maybe even more actually, because I believe it only activates for the duration of the killer seeing your aura, yeah, which is 3 seconds. So gaining a 6% bonus for 3 seconds is nothing at all. They could maybe even buff this to like something insane like 50%, because it's a 3-second bonus. It'd be like a quick, boost of speed or something. It could even be like 100 probably. Is that insane? Am I getting the maths wrong there? I don't think I am. Let's make it 100%. Off the record, a completely fine anti-tunnel perk. Until all generators are completed, whenever you are unhooked, for the next 40 seconds you gain endurance, and your grunts of pain are 100% quieter, and the killer cannot see your aura. This is a well done niche perk that fulfills its niche well by giving you nice chunky bonuses. Another good example, I think, of a fairly niche perk. Maybe not super niche. I guess like anti-tunnel is not that niche, but like a niche version of an anti-tunnel perk, I suppose. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like the lesser bardic inspiration, in my opinion. While idle, use F to perform, empowering all survivors within 60 meters for up to 15 seconds. While you are performing, other survivors will see your aura, you get special skill checks during that time, and while healing or repairing, basic skill checks are 20% more likely to appear. If you complete the performance, the effect ends after 90 seconds. Basically, this perk, in a radius, it's an AoE type effect perk that boosts skill check odds by 20%, which in theory makes gens faster to complete because you should in theory get more skill checks, more great skill check hits, which gives you an additional percentage per skill check hit. So honestly, I think currently this is not worth the trade-off for what it does. And I think a better thing to do would probably be to give it a much chunkier percentage increase, like a 50% increase to skill checks appearing. Or either that, you give it increase to skill checks appearing and also add in some kind of additional bonus to hitting the skill check, like a 0.5% or something. Open-handed, this is one I'm actually going to say is completely fine, even though it sounds kind of weak. And this makes it so all survivors see auras that have a range from 60 meters farther. So it basically means any auras you see as a survivor, you'll see them 60 meters additionally compared to what their base amount is. So it's an aura extending perk basically. The only thing with this one that I would say is a little bit niche, a little bit outdated these days, is the fact that there's less and less perks nowadays that have aura limits, which is the only thing. But I think for the perks it does work with, like Kindred, it's so strong, and therefore it's great as a support perk. Overcome. This is maybe one of the worst exhaustion perks, certainly one of the least used. Whenever you take damage, you retain your speed boost for 2 seconds longer. That's your like post-hit speed boost, and you gain exhausted for 40 seconds. I think maybe the way to make this better would be either it extends it out even longer, which is I think a bit excessive, or it gives you some kind of effect when injured, because I think that's sort of the flaw of this perk and why you would never run it over any of the other exhaustion perks which can be used whenever, like Sprint Burst or Lithe, for example. It needs some kind of like effect, I think, when you're injured, so you still feel some kind of bonus, but I don't know what to give it. I'm not too sure what you could give it though as an injured effect, so yeah. Again, what do you think? Let me know what you think. Overzealous. Whenever you bless or cleanse a totem, until you take damage, you repair 10% faster. If that totem was a hex totem, the effect is doubled to 20%. This is another perk that's honestly quite good. The main downside though is that it goes away as soon as you take damage. This would maybe be more effective even at just like a base level if it was when you get hooked, because I think then you'd be able to still escape a chase and keep this percentage. Otherwise you have to then reapply it by cleansing or blessing a totem again, which is just a bit of a hassle. Make it based on hooks rather than damage. Parental guidance. Whenever you stun the killer for 7 seconds, you make no grunts of pain, no pools of blood, and no scratch marks. This is a perk that honestly, I think it's quite niche actually. Stunning the killer doesn't happen that often, and I think getting the reward for just 7 seconds is so not worth it. I think that effect needs to be extended out to like minimum 30, and even then I think this is a super niche perk. So aside reworking it completely, I think extend the numbers out is the best option. Pharmacy. Whenever you unlock a chest, it will contain a rare medkit. You unlock chests 125% faster. The range at which the killer hears you unlocking chests is 12 meters shorter. This is overall fine, I think, for what it is. It helps with opening chests, which is nice. I've been complaining a lot about chests in this video, so that's good. That's a good aspect of it. But overall, it's still like super niche, I think. How would I change this? One idea I've always liked for pharmacy actually that I've had is that chests instead are turned into sort of like healing points, a bit like boons are. So when you're running pharmacy, if anyone is within say like 16 meters of a chest, then you heal them 100% faster or something like that, you know? It's sort of a bit like a boon, but they're permanent fixtures around the map in place of chests. I think that could be kind of unique and pretty cool. Plot twist. Plot twist, a perk which is also fine, I would say. This perk actually allows you to down yourself and put yourself into the dying state by crouching when injured, and from here you can fully recover and also fully heal yourself. It's a funny perk, but also it's actually quite powerful and allows you to self-heal in a relative amount of time, so it's pretty solid. I think this is fine. Plunderer's Instinct, sort of the OG chest perk that sort of does it does everything you'd need from chests basically. So it lets you see chests within 64 meters for a start, and it also gives you higher rarity items from chests. This is fine, I think, for what it is. It's the chest perk. I think leave it as the chest perk. Maybe you could uncap the distance as well. I don't think that would be too bad, but I think this is fine. Of all the chest perks, this one doesn't need an adjustment. This is the OG. It's functional for what it does, and also it's meant for newer players as well, I think. So Poised. The first time you start repairing each generator, you see the killer's aura for 8 seconds. Pretty decent. Whenever a generator is completed, you leave no scratch marks for 30 seconds. This is honestly quite decent. I think it's just people potentially don't even know that this has been reworked or even functions this way. It's news to me personally, but that sounds half decent, so I think leave it as is. Potential Energy, maybe one of the game's most unique perks. This perk lets you work on a generator and actually do this little crazy action to store charges in yourself, basically. You can still store up to 20 tokens by repairing the generator at a sort of regressed rate. And this is like, it's a great idea in theory, but the effect is simply not substantial enough, I think. And the fact you can lose all the tokens by getting injured makes this perk pretty bad overall, I'd say. Maybe this needs to work in a similar way, like I said with Overzealous, where it only deactivates when you get hooked potentially, because I feel like just getting hit is a bit too sudden, I think. So maybe it deactivates when hooking instead would be better. Even then, the trade-off, the sort of like regressed trade-off rate you have it's not ideal. Maybe they could just make it a 1-to-1 instead. Power Struggle, a super cool niche perk that lets you break free from the killer's grasp by yourself by having 15% wiggle progression and whilst the killer walks through an upright pallet. So you slam the pallet down yourself and you save yourself. It's pretty cool. It's usually paired up with like Flip-Flop and Unbreakable and stuff like that. It can be used normally, but it happens like so rarely where a killer walks through a pallet and you have the right wiggle progression. I don't know, maybe even just remove the wiggle progression, but I suppose the downside of that is like perks like Flip-Flop would allow you to instantly break out if you're down on a pallet. So, or you wouldn't even need Flip-Flop if it was like that. So I don't really know how you change this to make this less niche. I think maybe this just has to be a niche perk. Yeah, it just has to be that sort of fear factor kind of perk. Actually, an idea, maybe just merge this with Flip-Flop, put the two into one, make it into a perk where you're meant to sort of down on pallets and use the combination of the two effects. I actually quite like that. That's a better idea, I think. Premonition. While the killer is within 36 meters of you and inside a 45-degree cone, so that's like directly ahead of you, kind of like this, whenever you look at them, you hear a sound cue. For this one, I think this is fine. I think this is another one which is kind of meant for newer players, but it can also be used by experienced ones and is still pretty useful. It's a perk that cuts through stealth killers' shrouds or undetectable. So you can see Ghostface using this, for example, or Myers when they're undetectable. So it's actually, it does have a function as well, aside just newer players wanting to get a bit of experience and a bit of understanding where the killer can be and stuff like that. So yeah. Prove Thyself used to be one of the best perks in the game actually for the survivor side. Nowadays it's fine. For each other survivor within 4 meters of you, all survivors repair 10% faster. This is it's fairly serviceable. It's still pretty good. It does fine. It's not amazing, but it does the job. Quick and Quiet is another perk that's always been pretty serviceable and does its job pretty well. It allows you to do fast actions silently. It does have a cooldown, and in my opinion, they could maybe remove this cooldown. Maybe they could reduce it to like 5 seconds, but I honestly think, a bit like Iron Will again, just make it everything is silent. I don't think that's that OP, and this could actually make it quite a cool meta contender, I think, which would be really interesting. I mean, imagine a Quick and Quiet meta. I think that'd be genuinely cool, like stealth in chase or stealthily vaulting around. It would make you quite efficient, actually, I think, yeah. Quick Gambit, this is another perk I think is actually fine at the moment, post its rework. I think last year it was. So when you're chased by the killer, you see the auras of other survivors, and other survivors repair 5% faster. And this goes away when you take damage. So overall, this is pretty good. It lets you see what's happening when you're being chased, and you actually buff your teammates while you're being chased. So it's pretty good, especially if you're a very good chaser. So yeah, solid. Rapid Response. Whenever you fast exit a locker, you gain Exhausted for 20 seconds. Whenever you gain Exhausted, you see the killer's aura for 2 seconds. This is like kind of meant to be a sort of exhaustion support perk where you see the killer's aura whenever you get exhausted, but then it's also meant to sort of pair up as like a tracking perk, I guess, where you can get into a locker, jump out and see where the killer is. I don't quite know what its purpose is meant to serve, because I feel like for all of these situations, it doesn't really do all too much. So yeah, I don't know what you could do to this. I did have an idea in a recent video, which was, I'm actually just going to go watch my video because I don't remember. Right, yeah. So my idea for this perk was to make it almost like an exhaustion support perk, which I think would be quite unique, where you're able to actually take on your teammates exhausted from them. So you run alongside them and you're able to take their exhausted onto you. So you're almost like a chase supporter, which would be quite helpful, I think, for the people as well who aren't too confident in chase but want to help out. What does everyone think of that? That might be a little too OP, I don't know. Reactive Healing. While injured, whenever another survivor within 32 meters of you takes damage, you gain 50% missing healing progress. So this progressively can heal you up by 50% of your current progress when someone nearby gets hit. So if someone nearby gets hit, you get healed 50% of the way. Then if they get hit again, you go to 75%. So you get 50 of the 50. So it kind of scales 50% each time. I think this perk would be a lot better if it just did 50% overall progress rather than current progress, because I think otherwise it makes it a little bit pointless, because then that that way, it can be a case where a teammate gets hit twice, they get fully downed, and it gives you a full heal. I don't think that's that overpowered, but then maybe it would be if you started using it in Swifts and all stayed together, and maybe it would be. Maybe make it 33%, but make it current progress, or make it overall progress, sorry. Reassurance, another perk I think is pretty fine. This lets you pause the hook timer of another survivor for 30 seconds, and you need to be within 6 meters of the hook. I think this is perfectly fine. This is a nice anti-camp sort of perk, or just a sort of time-buying perk as well. It's pretty useful. Red Herring. After you repair a generator for at least 1 second, you see its aura. When you hide in a locker, the killer is alerted to the generator. This perk is awful, and honestly, I think it needs a complete rework, because the current way it works, where you're able to draw a killer to a generator, often just isn't really worthwhile, because by the time you've managed to draw a killer over to the generator, there's a chance one of your teammates has gone onto the generator and is now going to have the killer coming onto them because you drew them over. Or alternately, and the more likely outcome is that when you use this and you draw the killer over, they don't even go toward the noise notification because they're too busy doing other things. They might see a generator explode and they'll be like, okay, whatever. You know, they might log it in the back of their head, but they don't care that much. It's not like this thing where, oh, a generator exploded, I have to get over there right away. You know, oftentimes killers are busy, so this doesn't really do much. Repressed Alliance. After repairing generators for 45 seconds, while repairing a generator alone, use E to block that generator. What this needs, I think, is the ability to unblock the generator whenever you want to as well. I think that's what this perk needs. It means you can block off the generator when the killer approaches, but then if the killer decides to back off or go somewhere else, you're able to instantly unblock it and get back to work again. That's what this perk is missing, I think, mostly. Because at the moment, it often either causes complete time waste, or you block the gen and the killer chases you, and then they just come and kick the gen later on. So there's not much point. If it worked where you could unblock it on command as well, you could block it, take chase away, take the killer away, and then unblock it quickly for your teammates. Alternately, you could have the killer approach, you block the gen, the killer leaves, and you unblock it straight away. It gives you way more versatility. Residual Manifest. I really love this perk. This one's super cool. Whenever you blind the killer, they gain blindness for 30 seconds. You can also rummage chests 1 time and you get a guaranteed flashlight. The main draw of this perk is that you apply blindness to the killer, and this I believe is the only perk on the survivor side to apply blindness as an effect, which is super cool. 30 seconds is not much though, although it is quite an easy activation, which is worth keeping in mind. I think maybe this does still need an additional effect though, or something like that. You know, it needs some kind of bonus effect. I think the free flashlight is not really worth it. Most people can just bring one in themselves. I'm not too sure what you'd add to this, but I think it does need some kind of bonus effect, because currently just the blindness is like, it's nice as an effect, but I don't know if it does all too much. Maybe make it like 60 seconds, but again, it's quite easy to activate repeatedly, so I'm not sure if there's much point to that. Resilience. I actually went over this recently in a video. This perk has been unchanged now for 10 years. This perk has never been changed in its 10-year run since it released with the launch of the game, and I don't think it needs changing. I think it's actually perfectly fine. It gives you a 9% bonus to basically every single thing in the game whenever you're injured, and yeah, this is pretty useful. It's a pretty useful, nice passive buff or bonus. Has been a part of many strong builds in the past, but has never really been the focal point, so I think it's probably fine. Resurgence, another very strong perk, honestly, and it just makes it so when you get unhooked, you have 70% healing progress already. The only thing that can really counter this is like mangled, things that regress your heal bar, or is it hemorrhage? I think it's mangled. Maybe it's hemorrhage. I think it's hemorrhage actually. But otherwise, this thing is really solid and great. It can maybe even use a bit of a nerf to like 50%, honestly. It's a little OP sometimes, this thing. But yeah, it's probably fine as is. Road Life. One of the worst perks in the game, probably. While injured and not broken and repairing a generator. Talk about activation requirements. Whenever you hit a basic great skill check, you earn 1 token. Whenever you miss a basic skill check, you lose 1 token. When you have 4 tokens, spend all tokens to heal 100% faster until you stop healing. Why not just run like botany knowledge? What is the point? What are we doing here? This perk, I think just rework it entirely. What are we doing? It's bizarre. Rookie Spirit, another perk I've talked about relatively recently, and it's a perk that's not been changed at all since Leon's release, which was in 2021, which is now just over 5 years ago. And it works where basically you have to hit 3 skill checks, and then after this, you see the auras of all regressing generators, which lets you kind of help out the team, but also track the killer's position position because it means you can track where the killer's kicked a generator if a generator suddenly appears. And kind of the problem with this is that it gets outclassed by other tracking perks like Alert, I would say. It's just not as good, essentially. My idea for this was to make this more of a risk-reward type perk and more of a trade-off where you can continually track the killer's position after they've kicked a generator, so long as that generator is still regressing. So it basically allows you to continually track the killer, but then you're also allowing a generator to continue regressing. So you get a live ping, but obviously you're losing essentially objective progress. So I think that's quite a cool trade-off, and that would give it a bit more of a, and also remove the activation requirement, which is another thing that kind of just stilts this very slightly. Saboteur, where another survivor was picked up by the killer and is being carried, you see the auras of hooks and scourge hooks. You can sabotage hooks, cooldown 60 seconds. This is great, unique perk that allows you to sabotage without the use of a toolbox. It's completely fine. Works for its niche purpose and playstyle. Scavenger. Now this was a perk that was actually kind of, people thought it would be quite OP when it was announced, and this allows you to actually recharge your toolbox. So when your toolbox is empty, whenever you hit a great basic skill check, you earn 1 token. When you have 5 tokens, your toolbox recharges instantly and you repair 50% slower for 30 seconds. And you also get a free toolbox as well if you rummage a chest. So overall, I would say this just doesn't feel worth it because, you know, you recharge your toolbox, but then obviously you're being nerfed for 30 seconds. So it often just doesn't quite work unless you decide to go off and do something else. And this perk is kind of reflected by this is reflected by the perk's very low pick rate as well. So I think honestly, remove the slower repair speed, but potentially just make the requirement to recharge the toolbox a little bit higher potentially. Or either that, or you repair the toolbox, but it only gets 50% charges back or something. You know, you get less charges back could potentially be a better compromise. Scene Partner, this is a funny perk. While you are within the killer's terror radius, whenever you look at them, you scream and see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. There's a 50% chance you scream again. If you do, you see the killer's aura for 2 seconds more. So you can just repeatedly keep screaming and screaming and screaming. It's the whole sort of Steagull perk that people used to run along Steve. Yeah, I think it's fine as is. It's a funny perk. It's actually kind of good, honestly, sometimes for tracking the killer during chase. It does reveal you as well. This is also meant to be a very silly perk, so I think it's fine. Second Wind. After you heal 1 survivor while not broken, when you are unhooked, you gain broken. After 20 seconds, if you are not downed, you are instantly healed. Again, I think this is actually fine. It's a little bit slept on, but I think it does the job for what it is. It used to be, I remember when this first released, everyone thought it would be very OP because it's an insta-heal, but ultimately, because of the requirements you need, it's not that good. So I think in its current state, it's fine, honestly. Buffing it too much could be a bit of a detriment. Self-care, this is another perk that's been through quite a few changes, and it's always had adjusted numbers, and they've always tried to sort of settle on the correct amount for what this should be. I think they've kind of nailed it. You can heal yourself now, but it's 65% slower. So it's quite a lengthy heal, but obviously the ability to heal yourself at all is pretty huge. So I think this is fine as well. That's a pretty good compromise. Ooh, this is going to be a long video. I think I didn't quite realize how long it would be. All right. Self-preservation. Whenever another survivor is hooked, you gain elusive for 30 seconds. This is kind of bizarre. I guess it's meant to largely try to counter perks like barbecue. Still think specifically only activating when another survivor is hooked though, and only for 30 seconds, makes this like so incredibly niche. So this needs some kind of other additional effect, I think. The original way it worked was that it also activated when someone nearby to you got hit, but that wasn't very useful because obviously when that happens, the killer's typically focused on the person they're chasing. So you becoming elusive or losing your tracking elements wasn't that useful. But maybe if the two were together, maybe even with a third additional effect of some kind, this could be pretty solid. I just think at the moment, it's not that great. I mean, inherently it's a selfish perk, as the name even suggests, so it's not great, but I think it could definitely be better with something like that. Shoulder the Burden, quite a controversial perk, which allows you to actually take on someone else's hook states by unhooking them, and in the process you gain exposed for 40 seconds. This is actually quite balanced, I think, and it's a hard one because for the higher level players, this perk is pretty overpowered actually, but for most like casual players and like solo queue people, this isn't going to do all too much, and usually ends up in more problems than it does. It usually causes more problems than it does help with the team, because it gets you exposed, it gets you downed, the trading of hook states often muddies things quite a bit, so yeah. Overall, I actually think this is pretty balanced in the way it is. It's kind of a hard one again because of that disparity between casual and sort of experienced players. But overall, I would say it's about fine. Slippery Meat, I don't like this perk, but it is what it is. It allows you to attempt to unhook yourself up to 6 times and have a 4% more chance to succeed. It's fine for what it is. I don't like the whole luck mechanic, so I wish they had reworked that mechanic as a whole. This perk is inherently tied to that mechanic, so rework luck. Small game. Within 12 meters of you, whenever you look at a totem in a 45-degree cone, you hear a sound cue. There's a cooldown of 10 seconds. When a survivor cleanses the totem, you earn 1 token up to 5. For each token, the cone is 5 degrees smaller. So each totem you find, it's like a bit harder to find the next one. I think this is fine. It does the job as a totem location tool, and it does it very well. And I think for that reason, it's fine as is, and it doesn't really need to change. It's a niche perk, but again, it has the numbers right, I think. Smash Hit. This is another kind of odd exhaustion perk for the survivor side. I don't know why I said survivor side, it's like obviously. When you pallet stun the killer, you gain 50% haste for 4 seconds, and you also get exhausted for 20 seconds. So it's another exhaustion perk which has a slightly shorter cooldown. The main downside of this perk is that it requires a pallet stun, and pallet stuns often don't happen actually all too often unless a killer is being very, very aggressive. And therefore, this just isn't that useful, especially when compared to basically any other exhaustion perk the survivors have. Therefore, I think this maybe needs to be buffed up, maybe make the haste a bit more worthwhile, like boost the numbers a bit more, or even just add an extra second or something. Because when you do this with a god palette, by the way, this is like a guaranteed escape, but also that's a very specific circumstance, so I don't know. I think an extra second would do this perk no harm. Soul Survivor, my behated. This is another very selfish perk that I don't think should really even be in the game. I don't really get it. When a survivor dies, you earn 1 token. For each token within 24 meters, the killer cannot see your aura. When all other survivors are dead, you repair 75% faster, and you open exit gates and hatch 50% faster. I like the last part of it. I don't really like the progressive thing where it buffs you based on teammates dying. That to me sort of sends the wrong message, I think. And also, people in general just don't run these things because the goal generally is to keep your whole team alive. So having a perk that relies on them dying just is kind of inefficient, I think. Maybe they could even reverse the token effect, and they can make it so you get more protection whilst everyone's alive, and it actually lowers the more people die, and then you also get the endgame effect. Maybe that could work. So then you're sort of covered from auras for almost the entire match. Maybe reduce the amount, because that'd be a little bit too OP. Maybe make it like 6 meters or something. Or you make it barbecue range and you make it 40 meters. That could work. Maybe that could work. Solidarity. While injured and healing another survivor without a medkit, you also gain healing progress at 70% speed. So this basically allows you to heal another person, and you also get healed in the process. It's a cool idea. I don't think this perk would hurt, honestly, if it was just a 1-to-1. Make it so if you heal another survivor, you're healed for the same amount. I mean, logically speaking, you can only do this for what, like 1 health state generally? If you're healing someone from the dying state, then you're going to become healthy, aren't you? If you're healing someone when they're injured, you're going to become healthy. So either way, the most you can gain is 1 health state. So I think this is probably just fine, honestly. Yeah, I think so. It's often niche anyway that both of you are injured at the same time, unless it's a character that's constantly injuring people like Legion. This would actually be a great Legion counter though. Soul Guard. While hexed, you can fully recover. So you can fully recover a bit like Unbreakable. Whenever you fully recover, you gain endurance for 8 seconds with a cooldown of 30 seconds. This is a tough one to balance, as often it's caused problems in the past with people using it to repeatedly recover as part of a team. And so that's sort of why the numbers work with the way they do, and why the perk also has a cooldown. Whilst I do like the hex stipulation and think it's really cool and sort of lore and character fitting, I think maybe they could just remove this effect potentially, and maybe just make it a baseline thing where it applies endurance regardless of if there's a hex or not. Maybe if there's a hex, you could recover faster, or you could get endurance for longer. Maybe there could be some kind of thing like that where the hexes still matter toward this. Specialist. Whenever you rummage or unlock a chest, you earn 1 token up to 6. While repairing a generator, whenever you hit a great basic skill check, spend all tokens. For each token spent, the generator gains 4% permanent progress. This is a bit like a worst fast track because it requires you to unlock chests or rummage chests, which again is the bad activation. Any perk that has this activation is pretty much always instantly bad, and this is no different. This needs a different activation simply. I think maybe some fun thing to do with this would potentially make it like chase based or something. Maybe like if you take chase for 30 seconds you get a token, or I don't know, something like that. Like that could be quite cool, right? Like a trade-off where chases can turn into generator progress. I think that could be pretty cool. Spine Chill, a perk that used to be very good, nowadays is fine. When you're within 36 meters and the killer is looking at you, you hear a sound cue. Whilst you're in this range and that's happening, you bless and cleanse totems, heal, open exit gates, repair gens, sabotage hooks, unhook survivors, and unlock chests 6% faster. But this is only when the killer is looking at you. And the big thing that was removed from this perk that used to make it very good and was one of the original elements of the pretty like sort of famous vault speed build was that it allowed you to vault 6% faster as well. So you get an overall 15% vault speed. I think maybe they should just return this because currently this is pretty bad otherwise, I think. And the 6% it provides does very, very little. It maybe helps a little bit if you're opening exit gates, maybe helps a little bit when you're doing gens, but 6% is a very, very small number. So I think the biggest draw of this was the vault speed. They could even give you variant numbers, maybe say 10% on gens, 10% on exit gates, but I don't know, make it like 3% vault speed, you know, but I think it needs something like that to make it a little bit more worthwhile. So yeah, removing the vault speed basically was the thing that really killed this perk. Sprint Burst, sort of the classic exhaustion perk here. Whenever you start running, you gain 50% haste for 3 seconds and you gain exhausted for 40. I'd maybe say this could use a nerf a bit like Lithe, where it's a little annoying still, I think. It's a little bit too easy to run. It can often get you too big an advantage in chase that people just don't really bother. I think knocking this down to like, yeah, I don't know, like 35 or even like 25% haste for like 4 seconds would maybe be better, because then there's a greater chance the killer gets that initial swing on you. You can't hold it for too long. You kind of have to use it a bit sooner. I feel like maybe that would be a better trade-off potentially and make the perk a little bit more balanced. What do you think of that? Is that insane? Stakeout. After hiding for 15 seconds within the killer's terror radius, you earn 1 token up to 4. Whenever you hit a good basic skill check, spend 1 token, and the good skill check becomes a great, and you gain 1% more progress. So basically this allows you to store up tokens and turn your good skill checks into greats when you're repairing a generator. This is often run alongside hyper focus because it guarantees great skill checks regardless of where you hit in the skill check, which helps quite a bit with hyper focus. This otherwise is kind of the only reason why people use this perk. I would say maybe for this one, a good idea would be to cap the maximum totems at a much higher amount than 4. I think that could potentially make this a lot more viable and worthwhile, and also buff its potential alongside things like hyperfocus in those very niche builds. So potentially make this like, I don't know, maybe even make it uncapped. Is that too crazy? I don't know. Kind of like that idea though. Still Sight. This perk kind of got overthrown when they released the 11 perk. What's that one called again? The one where you see stuff when standing still. It's kind of like that perk is a better version of this one in my opinion. Where after standing still for 2 seconds within 24 meters, which is a much shorter range than the 11 one, which is 44, you see the killer's aura, you see the auras of chests, and you see the auras of generators. Chest auras is like, that's pointless. Who cares? Killer's aura within 24 meters, you can probably hear them. You're within their terror radius, because most terror radiuses are base 32 meters. And then you see the auras of generators, which is like, again, you can probably just see the generator if you're that close. So maybe make the idle longer, maybe make it like 5 seconds, but you can see across the entire map or something. I think that's a much more worthwhile perk and makes what is currently super niche into something actually pretty worthwhile. Streetwise, the first time you deplete an item's charges, you see the killer's aura for 8 seconds. Whenever you loot an item from a chest, it has 80% more charges. The second thing actually does make chest looting quite a bit more worthwhile in my opinion. The first thing I don't really see the point of, really. It seems like a little quirk, but it's okay. I think if this just added a base 80% charges to items in general, this would be a far better perk and probably a lot more meta as well, because it could pair up with things like toolboxes and medkits and stuff like that. Maybe make it 50%. Just make it like a baseline simple thing, a bit like Iron Will. This perk adds 50% charges to everything. anything. Strength in Shadows. I like this one. This one's super interesting. While in the basement, you can heal yourself, but 30% slower. Whenever you finish healing, you see the killer's aura for 10 seconds. This is super cool, but it's super niche, and it's actually eclipsed by self-care of all perks, because this is basically basement self-care. But this needs sort of a bonus over self-care, which is that it's a slightly the heal regression isn't as bad as self-care's. But even so, in most cases, it's still going to be worse, because you still need to run all the way over to the basement, get down in there, and then also start healing. So most of the time, it's more efficient to just instantly start healing, which is what self-care does. So I think the better thing here potentially would be just to not have any reduction in healing. So it's just the same heal speed. It's I think base heal speed is 16 seconds currently, I believe. So make it 16, so make it just a base of 16 seconds basically. And then you also get the bonus of seeing the killer's aura. I think that's pretty good. Okay, I have returned for page 11 with a nice ginger tea. It's sort of weird recording videos this long. Teamwork, collective stealth. Whenever another survivor finishes healing you, while within 60 meters of each other, you both leave no scratch marks. When either of you leaves this range, this ends after 4 seconds. This is another one, a bit like Blood Pact, which is what these perks were actually inspired by, which is just really bad. My idea for this was actually to reuse the invisibility mechanic with the Black Banquet, and actually make this instead so you both become invisible so long as you remain within 60 meters of each other, which I know I love what I do. Teamwork, full circuit. For each other survivor repairing a generator with you, good basic skill check zones are 25% bigger. Loud ass seagulls. While repairing with at least one other survivor, you repair 5% faster. This one's fine, as I do think the bonus generator sort of zones or sizes are really great, but the bonus to the repair speed needs to be overall faster. It needs to be at least like 10-15%. Teamwork power of 2. Whenever you finish healing another survivor, while you stay within 60 meters of each other, you both gain 5% haste. When either of you leave this range, it ends after 4 seconds. Again, a little bit like the past two, this just needs a bigger number on it. It needs to be like 10% haste or something, because realistically, once you're in a chase, this perk is gonna deactivate. You can't remain within 16 meters of each other permanently. So just yeah, make it more substantial or something like that, or make the range wider, make it like 32 meters or something like that. But 16 meters for 5% haste is just not enough. Teamwork, soft spoken. For each other survivor repairing a generator with you, the range of generator repair noises is 25% smaller. While repairing with at least one other survivor, you repair 5% faster. So again, boost the repair speed, I think, for one, and then for the repair noises, make it, I think, substantially smaller. If this is the main draw of the perk, you know, it needs to be like 50%, 75%, or something like that. I know it scales based on the number of survivors, but at the very least, it should mean that when you have all three together, the gen should be silent, I think. So at least make it like 33.3 so it does that. Teamwork throwdown. I do love that they've introduced a new mechanic with teamwork perks, but so many of them are just dreadful. Whenever you blind or pallet stun the killer for 10 seconds, other injured survivors within 24 meters gain endurance and see the killer's aura. This perk, like, never activates because it requires you to blind or stun the killer, and this only activates for 10 seconds then for the survivors around you. If you've just stunned the killer, there's a good chance they're not going to hit your teammate anyway, so there's not really much point to this, I think. I think the effect itself is a decent idea though, so I think, again, just buff the numbers. Instead of 10 seconds, make it like 30, make it something where it's actually feasible this is going to even activate within the match, because this, I believe, currently is in the bottom like 10 perks, like genuinely on the survivor side. This thing is not used at all. Teamwork, toughen up. While injured, whenever another survivor within 24 meters of you blinds or pallet stuns the killer, for 30 seconds you make no grunts of pain, you leave no pools of blood, and you leave no scratch marks. Again, it relies on blinding or pallet stunning the killer, which just isn't so useful. I did have an idea for this in a fairly recent video. I think a key thing for this is it should be able to activate when you do it onto other survivors, because currently it only activates when another survivor does it for you, which is sort of like, I guess it's meant to kind of be like the reverse of the throwdown one. This is like super weird. It should work both ways at like a bare minimum, I think. And even then, it's not great, but like at least it's like a little more substantial. Maybe it just needs to be activatable somehow in a different method, because I think like blinds or pallet stuns, they don't happen very much. Blinds are a little bit easier, I guess, but pallet stuns, not so much. Technician. While repairing a generator, the range of generator repair noises is 8 meters shorter. Whenever you miss a basic skill check, the generator generator does not explode, but loses 3% more progress. This again is another one of those sort of training wheel perks. It's not really meant for you, I think, if you're a more experienced player, and therefore I think this is fine. Tenacity. While downed, you gain 50% haste, so you crawl 50% faster. You can crawl and recover at the same time, and your grunts of pain are 75% quieter. This is another sort of anti-slug perk. Again, it kind of just gets outclassed by Unbreakable though, because Unbreakable's simpler and does the job a little bit better. Tenacity sort of aims to make you reposition yourself instead of instantly recovering, and even then you still need a teammate to come along and tap you, so tap you. I'm not sure how they could adjust this though. Maybe just buff the numbers, make it 100% quieter so you're completely silent, maybe make you even faster or potentially progressively faster the more you crawl, and maybe make it so, I don't know, or maybe even make it so when you crawl you recover and then you have to continually crawl and then you recover eventually, but at the usual speed. Maybe no increased speed like Unbreakable could work. This is not happening. This is one of the wildest perks to have survived for so long without getting a substantial change. While injured, great basic skill check zones are 30% bigger. I think this should just probably be merged with something like Resilience. I think that perk should probably just get this effect. This effect is way too small and insubstantial to be an entire perk by itself, so put it onto something else. Maybe even make it base kit. Make it just base kit so when you're injured, your zones are bigger. I wouldn't mind that. That could be kind of cool. Troubleshooter. While chased by the killer, you see the aura of the generator with the most progress. Whenever you drop a pallet, you see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. When the killer stops chasing you, this ends after 10 seconds. This isn't half bad, as it allows you to stay away from where the action is happening with other survivors by avoiding the generator with the most progress. It also gives you sight onto the killer whenever you drop a pallet, which is pretty useful, I'd say. It's better the other way around with alert when they're breaking it, but it's still quite useful. And so overall, I think this is probably fine. People don't use it all too much though, and I think it's probably because it's a little bit wordier than some of the other perks, but yeah, this isn't too bad. It's pretty solid. Maybe it could use an additional effect where it also activates on vaults or something, as in you see the killer's aura when you vault as well. Maybe that'd be a bit too strong, I don't know. But I think maybe it needs some like kind of little additional effect as well. Unbreakable. Once per trial, while down by the killer, you can fully recover. While downed, you recover 35% faster. This perk is great. They've again fine-tuned this one over years. It's one of those perks that's been through like a bunch of different iterations. I think it's great the way it is now, so yeah. Up the ante. For each other survivor alive, all survivors are 3% luckier. All survivors can attempt to unhook themselves. Another perk I really hate. I don't like this thing. I don't like the entire luck mechanic though, like I've said. Rework the luck mechanic. Urban Evasion. While crouch, you gain 100% haste. This again, kind of a niche perk, but I think it kind of fulfills the role it does well. Although it's a little bit like Fixated, I think, and Fixated has a secondary ability, which is also letting you see your own scratch marks. I feel like Urban Evasion kind of needs a similar thing. Maybe even the same thing, where you crouch faster, but then you also see scratch marks. I don't think that would even be so bad. I think that's a pretty decent idea. But it needs some kind of other additional secondary effect, I think, because I think just the crouch speed is not quite enough to warrant it for a lot of people, to warrant its use. Visual. Oh boy. All survivors within 60 meters of you lose all status effects 66% faster, and this persists 15 seconds after leaving your radius. This does need a nerf because 66% is wildly high. This could be halved, honestly, and it would still be very powerful. So I think halve this, honestly, to like 33. I believe originally back in the day it was like 20% or 25. That did feel a little too low. So maybe like 33% will feel about right, I think. It's mostly punishing for builds that center heavily around status effects, or particularly exhausted. It can be quite a nuisance for the killer side. Finally, we have Visionary. Within 32 meters of you, you see the auras of generators. Whenever a generator is completed, there's a cooldown of 16 seconds. So this perk deactivates. This is, I don't understand why this perk deactivates when you complete a generator. When you complete a generator, that's when you want to be looking for more generators. So why would they deactivate this in the exact time when you need it to be active? So remove that last line and also boost it up to 36 meters, a bit like Bond, and just make this a Bond for generators. I think that's completely fine. It becomes genuinely very viable for perks like the game or Midwich, where gens can sometimes be a little tricky to find, and that'd be perfect. Final page for survivors. We have Wake Up. When all generators are completed, you see the auras of exit gate switches. While opening an exit gate, other survivors see your aura. For each survivor alive, you open exit gates 12.5% faster. I like this one. It rewards you for working as a team and having more people alive, which is nice compared to a silly perk activation like Soul Survivor, which doesn't. And it fulfills a niche role. I actually think this is fine. It could maybe use a bit of a buff, make you open exits even faster possibly. Maybe it needs some kind of bonus though. Maybe when you activate it, other survivors gain like a speed boost or something. I don't know, like maybe it could do something like that, because at the end of the day, this is like super niche. It's only active in the end game, and it requires you to be opening exit gates. You know, it's like the maximum value you can get from this is what, like 40 seconds of activation if you're the one to open both gates. So maybe it needs an additional little effect, like a haste bonus for your team when you're on the gate or something. We see you. Whenever the killer sees your aura, you earn 1 token with a cooldown of 10 seconds. When you have 4 tokens, spend them all, then all survivors see the killer's aura for 15 seconds. This is a cool idea, but I do think having to collect 4 tokens is a bit of a hassle, a bit of a nuisance, and then seeing the killer's aura for 15 seconds doesn't help you that much, especially if you're a team. It's maybe good for solo queue, possibly. I think this would work much better where maybe they could even make it so when the killer sees your aura, your team all sees the killer's or something like that, and then just put a token limit onto it, like 4 tokens, so that can happen 4 times a trial. I think that would be fine. I think the way it works currently, it's just not worthwhile. Takes time to build up, and then even when you see the killer's aura, it's like only 15 seconds. That's not that worthwhile. So some kind of little rework here I think would work out for this. Will make it another good example of a really solid perk that's been through a number of changes but is in a really good spot at the moment. Whenever you unhook a survivor, you heal 100% faster for 90 seconds. Amazing, good job. I think it does the job great, encourages you to unhook, and gives you a nice big juicy heal bonus. We're gonna live forever. You heal down survivors 100% faster. Whenever you finish healing a down survivor, they gain endurance for 10 seconds with a cooldown of 30 seconds. This, I think, again, is kind of niche, but does fulfill the niche it has very well, and is pretty worthwhile because of that. So I would say whilst it's not always useful every game, when it does come in handy, it is very, very useful, and so I think it's fine. Wicked. While in the basement, you can unhook yourself. Whenever you are unhooked, you see the killer's aura for 20 seconds. This is a very unique perk, and people often use it in sort of a gimmicky way to self-unhook in the basement. I would say overall, this probably needs some kind of buff, but I'm not sure how because it's tied to the basement, and I think that is a unique element of it that needs to stay. Not to go back to the invisibility mechanic too much, but maybe when you manage to unhook yourself in the basement, you also become invisible for 20 seconds, say. So you see the killer's aura for 20 seconds, and you become invisible. That can make this a genuinely good anti-basement sort of perk. I think that could be kind of cool, actually. Wide open throttle. Whenever you fast vault a pallet, you gain 15% haste for 3 seconds. The pallet is reset and blocked for 60 seconds, and all survivors see its aura for all that time. For this one, I honestly don't really know why it needs the haste bonus as well. That's the bit that's a little bit confusing to me, is why this perk also gives you a haste bonus when realistically the fact it's resetting a tool is already enough of a buff, as you can use it mid-chase and you loop back to the pallet that you use the perk on and drop it again. So I think for this, it just doesn't need the haste bonus. I'd actually nerf this very slightly. I don't think it's like OP or anything, but I just don't think it needs the haste bonus. Windows of Opportunity, the most used perk in the game for quite some time now. On the survivor side, actually maybe overall if it's on the survivor side, and it lets you see the auras of pallets, breakable walls, and windows within 32 meters, which is very, very strong because it allows you to pathfind very easily when you're in chase and kind of like turn your brain off a little bit in fairness. This used to have a cooldown of like 20 seconds, which I think was way too long back when we had that. So I wouldn't say we need that. Maybe you could lower the meter range. You could lower it to like 20 meters or something. Maybe something like that. Maybe they could also introduce the thing that Tae Young's perk has, which is a sort of a number limit to the amount of auras you can see. They could do that. They could make it so you could see maybe like 8 auras as a maximum, you know? Maybe something like that would be good, because then it limits your range sort of, not artificially, kind of artificially, I suppose. But they could do something like that maybe to even this out. Finally, for survivors, we have Wiretap. After repairing 40% of generators while next to a generator, use F to trap it for 120 seconds or until the killer damages it. All survivors see that generator's aura for that time. While the killer is within 40 meters of the generator, all survivors see the killer's aura. So this is sort of like an aura radius placed onto a generator where it tracks the killer's position whenever they're nearby to a generator. This is fine. It's a little niche. People don't tend to use this too much. Sometimes they pair it up with stuff like Blast Mine, but generally speaking, you don't see this one all too much. I think maybe if they just boosted the range a little bit, that'd certainly help. Maybe they could also make it so it just doesn't get destroyed when
when the gen gets kicked, because I think that is kind of quite a sizable downside. But then maybe that would be a little too OP, I don't know, possibly. Maybe make it 20 meters, maybe try out some different meter ranges to see how that would change the perk. I think that'd be fine though, yeah. Alright, well, on to killers.
So starting out on the killer side, we have a Nurse's Calling. Within 32 meters of injured survivors who are healing or being healed, you see their auras. Overall, I think this one is pretty solid, but maybe could use a slight change, as 32 meters is obviously the base number for most killers' terror radiuses. This could maybe be bumped up to like, say, 36 or something, just a small little addition to make it so killers could see the survivor auras before the survivors are able to hear them. I think that would be a pretty fair counter. Next up, we got Agitation. While carrying a survivor, you gain 18% haste, and your terror radius is 12 meters larger. This perk is overall pretty solid, I think. It's good for pairing up with things like Starstruck as well, or carry builds with Iron Grasp and stuff like that. Overall, I'd say it's pretty much fine. There's not really much I'd do to this, honestly. I think it does the job pretty well. Alien Instinct. Whenever you hook a survivor, the farthest injured survivor gains Oblivious for 60 seconds, and you see their aura for 8 seconds. Honestly, the main problem with this, in my opinion, is the fact that it highlights the furthest or the farthest away survivor in the game. I think this can often be quite detrimental, as it's encouraging you to go very far afield rather than going for someone closer, which is usually preferable, I'd say. There's another perk that also applies Exposed. I think it's Friends Till the End, and it has a similar effect to this. Honestly, I'd like to see something like that get merged with this, so it makes someone oblivious and exposed, and so they may actually try and hide and keep out of the match in case the killer comes for them. I think that could be quite cool. What do you think of that? All Shaking Thunder. Whenever you fall from at least 1.2 meters, your lunge attacks are 75% longer for 25 seconds. Cooldown 5 seconds. Now this is such a cool perk. I love the idea of this. It's almost like Killer Balance Landing, where you can drop from a height and then you get a bonus of some kind. In this case, you're able to lunge a longer distance. The problem is, and a bit like with Balanced Landing, like I said earlier, it doesn't work too well considering there's a bunch of maps that don't really have any drop downs, so there's lots of cases where this perk is just not very useful. I did have an idea for this, and it was to make it so you actually instead start the trial with 2 tokens, a bit like Coup de Grace, where you're able to gain tokens, but you start off with 2 tokens, and these extend your lunges when you use them. However, you're able to also recharge these tokens by falling from a great height, but there's only a maximum of 2 you can get, so you can't just like repeatedly fall from a height and gain like infinite tokens or something. I think that could be kind of cool. Awakened Awareness. While carrying a survivor within 20 meters of you, you see the auras of other survivors. Now this is one that's pretty good when paired up with perks like Agitation and Iron Grasp, any kind of like backpack build basically. I want to say this is probably fine because it fulfills that niche. Maybe this is another kind of merger situation where something like Agitation should be merged with this. I think that'd honestly be fine. That'd also buff both perks overall and would probably be the best of both worlds. I feel like there's a lot of killer perks like this that do very, very specific things, and so it's sort of hard to, like, if I was going to buff this perk, I would probably do something like make the carry speed faster, but then obviously that's what Agitation does. So I think in this case, it'd probably be better just to merge them, honestly. Bamboozle. This is a perk that has not been changed since its release in 2018, and you can kind of see why, because it's pretty balanced, it doesn't really need a change. Whenever you vault a window, it is blocked for survivors for 16 seconds. You basic vault windows 15% faster. Barbecue and Chili, another perk that's honestly completely fine. I don't think it needs any changes. It's one of the best sort of information / tracking perks we have in the game. Whenever you hook a survivor for 5 seconds, you see the auras of all survivors who are at least 40 meters away from the hook survivor. Really good. Batteries included. Within 16 meters of a completed generator, you gain 5% haste. When you leave the range, this ends after 5 seconds. So the problem with this one is the fact that when there's a completed generator, typically as a killer, there's not too much reason to go back to that area, because generally speaking, you want to cover where the gens are. Therefore, when you're going into these areas, you're usually chasing someone, and so this bonus haste is nice, but currently I would say is nowhere near substantial enough to make too much of of a difference. So I could say this could easily be buffed up to like, I don't know, 7, 7.5, maybe even higher, honestly. Because at the end of the day, you want to, I think this perk should aim to punish survivors who are running back into completed gens, who are trying to draw you away from your current generators. So I think buff those numbers up, this would be pretty good. Beast of Prey, a perk that's been through a lot of changes. Whenever you gain Bloodlust, gain undetectable for 40 seconds. This used to be a lot worse, where it was just undetectable when you had Bloodlust, which is really weak, and like, I don't know how that was even designed originally or whatever. This is still pretty bad. It's not quite as bad. It means if a chase is going on for a long time, you're going to gain some undetectable mid-chase, which lets you sort of mind game and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know about this one. Maybe this could even extend to the end of a chase or something, so whenever you get a hit or whenever a chase ends, that's when the undetectable goes away. Maybe that would be a better buff for this. Or just scrap this perk, honestly. I feel like it's such a bizarre effect. Bitter Murmur. Whenever a generator is completed, you see the auras of survivors within 60 meters of it for 5 seconds. When all generators are completed, you see the auras of all survivors for 10 seconds. I'd actually think this perk is completely fine. It's not the most amazing tracking perk, but I would say overall it's pretty solid, and it doesn't need anything done to it necessarily. Maybe could use a few number buffs potentially, or at least trial some number buffs, I would say. Otherwise, I think it's probably fine. Yeah. Blood Echo. Whenever you hook a survivor for 30 seconds, all injured survivors gain exhausted and gain hemorrhage. I do love this perk actually, and I really love running it on a bunch of characters, and even the Oni actually himself, because it works quite well when you're trying to keep people injured, which I think is what this perk is trying to do. I think it needs to probably apply more though. I think that's probably the issue with it. I think for one, it should definitely apply Mangled as well to slow down healing, because I feel like that's what it's trying to do, isn't it? It's punishing people for being injured, so if they're mid-heal, it should be trying to punish that even more. So I think maybe add in Mangled there, and it would be probably pretty solid then, I think. Yeah. Blood Warden. When an exit gate is opened, once per trial, when you hook a survivor, both exits are blocked for 60 seconds. You see the auras of survivors within exit thresholds. This is another one I think is completely fine, and it's also another one that's not been changed since Freddy came out in 2017, and I think the reason for that is they kind of nailed it the first time. It's a fun sort of end game, catching the survivors off guard sort of perk, and it does its job really well. I'm not sure how you'd buff this. I'd maybe honestly argue it should be activatable multiple times, maybe. Wait a minute. Maybe at a regressing rate of something like, so say the first hook is 60 seconds, the next one's 30 seconds, the next one's 15. I think that could be kind of cool to try and give people a chance to reclaim the game more and more, but maybe that'd be a bit too overpowered. At the end of the day, it's an end game only perk, and it requires a very, very, very specific activation, so I don't think that's too insane. I think that'd be fine. Bloodhound, a very product of its time perk. Pools of blood are brighter and last 4 seconds longer. Now, this sounds pretty bad, but it's actually pretty useful, I would say, and it's also quite good in the early days when you're learning to track and you're learning to follow blood, and I think this is mainly what this perk is geared toward, is newer players who are learning to track and they're learning to pay attention to the environment and look for blood pools. This really helps them, I think. It really helped me when I started playing the game, so I don't think this necessarily needs too much. Again, maybe you could just make the numbers even longer or something. I don't think it really needs it though. 4 seconds longer. Blood already remains for quite a long time. You don't necessarily need a super long duration for this, so yeah, I think this is probably just fine. Brutal Strength. You basic break pallets and breakable walls and damage gens 20% faster. This is great. It's a great solid just baseline buff to your powers, or to your kick, sorry. The only thing with this is I think nowadays 20% does feel a little too low. I think this could quite easily be 25 or even 30%, but I don't know if that's me being a little crazy. It'd be interesting to see how that is in action. Pool of Brine. Oh boy, I've got some memories of this one. Whenever you damage a generator, it regresses 50% faster for 70 seconds. For that time, whenever a survivor hits a good basic skill check, while repairing the gen, you get alerted. So this still works in a relatively similar way to how it used to back when it was really overpowered during the 3-gen/gen kick meta. Nowadays, I would say this is probably just fine, because it's only a 50% faster regression, it's limited to 70 seconds, I think this is probably fine. I personally, when I encounter this perk facing it, I never have too much of a problem against it, but maybe that's just me. All right, we got some spicy ones. Corrupt Intervention. When the trial starts, the 3 farthest generators from you are blocked for 120 seconds or until you down a survivor. I think this perk has actually been balanced really well. It is a very strong and very used perk, but I think nowadays in its current state, it's honestly fine. I don't think it's too overpowered anymore. Choleraphobia. This perk is very annoying to face. Survivors within your terror radius heal 50% slower, and while healing, basic skill checks spin 50% faster. So the heals take forever with this thing, and the skill checks are like, they go past like crazy. I kind of think this perk is fine, actually. In some ways, I wish it was merged with Distressing, which we have down here, which makes your terror radius 30% larger. Maybe that's a bit too overpowered though, but I'm gonna maybe suggest that as a change, is Choleraphobia and Distressing get paired together, because I think then that'd be a really deadly combo. But then also I like Distressing on its own. Alright, well, we'll get to that. Maybe it needs a very slight buff to your terror radius, like a 10% buff or something. I think that could be kind of cool, just to make the most of this. Next up, we got Coup de Grace. I think that's how you say it at least. Whenever a generator is completed, you earn 2 tokens up to 5. Whenever you lunge attack, spend 1 token to make it 80% longer. This perk is also another one I would say is completely fine. It does the job very well. The extended lunges are always very useful. Honestly, with this, I would even say they could maybe buff the numbers a little bit. You could make it so you get 3 tokens, potentially up to 6 instead. I really don't think that'd be too bad. There's plenty of times as well with this where you're going to waste your tokens because you do like a shorter lunge is required for certain situations. So I think doing this wouldn't be so bad, honestly. Cruel Limits, or Claustrophobia, some people may remember it as. Whenever a generator is completed, you see the auras of all windows for 30 seconds, and all windows are blocked for survivors for 30 seconds. Now this one is really cool. I love the idea of this. Like, a gen gets completed and the map gets like locked down. The problem with this is that it's a very short window, 30 seconds is barely anything, and pallets exist. So most of the time, survivors can pretty easily evade this. The windows being blocked isn't always going to be a problem. Sometimes it'll catch them out in very specific moments, but most of the time, this isn't going to do too much. My idea I had for this recently, and this may sound a little overpowered, but it was to basically just make it so all windows get blocked, but also all the pallets get blocked too. So whether they're drop pallets or whether they're upright, for 30 seconds, the map is locked down. And I think this would be fine because 30 seconds is not that long a time. I think it'd be fine. Dark Arrogance. This is another one that probably needs a buff. You basic vault windows 25% faster. Whenever you are blinded or pallet stunned, the duration is 15% longer. This is a perk that does sort of a trade-off, but the trade-off is not really worth it, I would argue. Vaulting windows 25% faster is very nice, but I don't know if it's worth it when you're stunned for 15% longer. You don't get stunned all too much, mind you, but the times when you do, this is super punishing to have this extra delay. So yeah, I think this isn't quite worth it in its current state. Maybe if there's some kind of benefit to getting stunned on top of this, so say your baseline is you basic vault windows 25% faster, and you get this reduction, and you also get this longer stun duration, but maybe every time you get stunned, you get an additional percentage added onto that vault bonus. I think that could kind of work. So although the stun's longer, when you do get stunned, it increases your vault bonus by, say, like, I don't know, 2.5% or something. So if people keep stunning you, by the end of the game, you could have like a 40% vault speed bonus or something. I think that could be genuinely pretty good. And maybe even then still lower down the pallet stun addition to like 10%, because 15 is a little too high, I think. Dark Devotion. This is a pretty interesting perk. Whenever the obsession takes damage for 45 seconds, your terror radius is set to 40 meters, the obsession has your terror radius, and you gain undetectable. So this perk actually allows you to place your terror radius onto a survivor, or specifically the obsession. And this can be useful for general confusion. I think the problem with this, and the problem with all the add-ons like this that always revolve around this type of thing, a bit like Skull Merchant's unpublished manuscript and stuff like that, or at least maybe that was the old, but I don't know. I think that's how the problem with this is generally people can catch on to what's happening pretty quickly, and so this often doesn't really buy you much time or make too much of a difference, I would say. Maybe a better idea would be if you were able to somehow like place your terror radius at a certain point. You know how maps have like those beams you can place down? Maybe if they did that for Killer, where you're able to place down almost like a marker point that's invisible to survivors, survivors where you're able to set your terror radius for 45 seconds. That could be quite good because then you could use it on like a multi-floor level and actually potentially confuse survivors with it. And then you can roam around undetectable. I kind of like that idea. What do you think of that? Darkness Revealed. Whenever you search a locker, you see the auras of survivors within 8 meters of lockers for 8 seconds. Cooldown 30 seconds. This is another one that probably needs a buff, honestly. I think the biggest stipulation here is that you only see the survivors within 8 meters of lockers, which seems like just, again, a really pointless stipulation. I don't know why that needs to be there. Also because locker spawns are so inconsistent. So I think the better thing here would be just when you search a locker, you see all survivors for 8 seconds, and there's a cooldown of 30 seconds. I think that'd honestly be fine. I don't think that's too much of a problem. Dead Man Switch. When you hook a survivor, the first time a survivor stops repairing a generator, it is blocked for 35 seconds. Cooldown 35 seconds. I think this perk functions fine, but I do still think the block is a little bit too long, and I think this can be a little too overpowered sometimes because of that. It can lead to too much blockage going on in the game, and therefore I think something like 20 seconds is honestly completely fine. And then also lower the cooldown to 20 seconds. Not that the cooldown makes much of a difference in fairness. Deadlock. Whenever a generator is completed, the generator with the most progress is blocked for 25 seconds. Again, I think the numbers here are a little bit high. The perk effect is fine, it is strong, it's useful, but I think something like 15, 20 is much more appropriate. I think 25 seconds can still feel a little too punishing, can leave you waiting around a survivor a little bit too long, and so I think knock it down at least a little bit. Deerstalker. Every 30 seconds, the survivor with the least time in chase sees your aura for 3 seconds. While a survivor sees your aura, you see their aura. So this is almost like Object of Obsession, but for killers, kind of. And it's encouraging you, I suppose, to chase the survivor with the least time in chase, which could be that you find the weak link in the team potentially. But more than likely, it just means you're spreading the hooks about. So this isn't too much of a benefit for the killer side, really. And it's also not so great because obviously you see each other's auras. I think this could maybe be a fine perk if it just made it so the survivor didn't see you. I don't really see why that's added in there, unless I'm misunderstanding the perk. I don't think I am. I think just remove that part and this perk is fine. Maybe even make it so, actually no, it's already every 30 seconds. I think that'd be fine. Yeah, the person with the least amount of time in chase, you see their aura for 3 seconds every 30. I think that'd be fine. Leave it at that. I think that's completely fine. Discordance. Within 128 meters of you, whenever a generator is being repaired by at least 2 survivors, you're alerted. While that generator is being repaired by at least 2 survivors, you see its aura. When it is no longer being repaired by at least 2 survivors, this ends after 4 seconds. This is great, I think, and is perfectly fine. I just think remove the aura cap. I don't know why it's at 128 meters. This does encompass, I think, most maps, but if this is the case, then why put a range on it? Just remove the range. Dissolution. 3 seconds after a survivor takes damage, for 20 seconds, the next time a survivor fast vaults a pallet while within your terror radius, it is destroyed. I'm going to do a bit of a hot take here and say this is completely fine. I think maybe the only thing would be extending the time this is active for out to like 30 seconds, and then also potentially lowering the activation window to maybe like 2 or 1 seconds, because then that means you can still double vault back as a survivor if you've just pallet stunned the killer, but it also means there's a slightly tighter window where if they drop the next pallet and vault it, then it breaks. I think that's like an important distinction. So maybe make it like 2 seconds, 30 seconds. I think that'd be fine. Distressing. So this simply makes your terror radius 30% larger, and whilst this isn't so great alone, I do think the combination potential, we'll go with that. The potential to pair it up with other perks is there. Again, I think this can maybe use a number buff, maybe even make it like 40, 50% larger. All this perk is doing is making your terror radius larger. So I think it'd be perfectly fine to have the numbers be higher. Dominance, a perk that's honestly really cool, but very useless. The first time each chest is being unlocked and each totem is being blessed or cleansed by a survivor, it is blocked for 16 seconds. This is like kinda nice if you're running a hex build, but like that's about it. And generally all that's gonna happen is someone's gonna come up to the totem, they'll touch it, they'll see it gets blocked, they'll run away, and they're gonna come back later. Like it doesn't make too much of a difference, I think. I also think the 16-second timer isn't going to make too much of a difference between a shorter timer or something like that. So the key thing here is to maybe add some kind of objective thing. So an idea I had in a recent video was to make it so the first time chests, totems, or gens are touched, they get blocked for 8 seconds. This also allows you some kind of early game tracking as well, and also some initial delay or information to where survivors are, which I like. Dragon's Grip. Whenever you damage a generator for the next 30 seconds, the first survivor that repairs that generator screams and alerts you to their position, and they become exposed for 60 seconds. This perk is not the greatest, and mainly because it sort of requires you to like linger around the generator, or if you go far enough away, then typically once you're back again, the survivors could have hidden by that point. So this just isn't too strong. Also, exposed is just not as strong as people seem to think it is. Just because it makes units to down doesn't mean it's always useful. There's still ways to easily avoid this, like vaulting windows, dropping pallets and stuff like that. So I think this does need a bit of a change. I think a pretty easy adjustment you can make is probably just removing the timer on it, because it's currently got a 30-second timer when you kick the generator, which seems a little bit redundant. So aside like a more substantial rework of this, I'd say just knock off the timer. Dying Light. Whenever you hook a survivor that is not the obsession, you get 1 token. While the obsession is alive, for each token, other survivors heal 3% slower, they repair 3% slower, and they sabotage hooks 3% slower. And the obsession gains a 33% boost to heals and also unhooks. So it's sort of meant to be a buff to the obsession, but a nerf to everyone else in the game. So the idea is you're trying to hook everyone else that is not the obsession and nerf them down, but during this time, the obsession also gets a bonus. This perk is honestly just not too great, because for one, you're buffing the other side, which is generally something you don't want to do. And also the percentages you're adding on to make things slower are not really substantial enough, especially not to even out the bonus the obsession gets. And so either it needs to be a higher percentage for the other survivors, or you just remove the whole obsession thing, or you make it far lower at like 12% or something. I think that'd be a lot better, because currently this is like just really bad. It's just kind of you're just kind of nerfing yourself, I would argue. Enduring. Finally one we can just pass on. While not carrying a survivor, pallet stuns are 50% shorter. Yes, lovely. Maybe even make it whilst you're carrying as well. That wouldn't be so bad. This perk originally made DS stuns shorter, which is pretty cool. It probably shouldn't do that, but it's pretty cool. Eruption. Whenever you damage a generator, when you down a survivor, all gens damaged this way explode and lose 10% progress, and survivors repairing them scream and reveal themselves for 12 seconds. I think this is perfectly fine. This has been through a few different iterations as well. I think currently it's honestly fine. Fire Up. Whenever a gen is completed, earn 1 token up to 5. For each token, you basic break pallets and breakable walls 6% faster, you damage gens 6% faster, you pick up and drop, and you vault windows 6% faster. Again, another perk that I think its heart is in the right place. It's got a good idea of buffing you up as the game goes on. As you get closer to losing, you get stronger and stronger and stronger. However, the numbers are honestly just really low. Instead of 6, it could be 7, maybe even a bit higher, like 7.5, maybe 8. I think, again, it's another one of those ones where you have to sort of trial out some numbers. I think they should do some number trials with this one and sort of see what ends up happening. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Forced Hesitation. I love this perk. Whenever you down a survivor, other survivors within 60 meters of the down survivor gain 20% hindered for 10 seconds. Cooldown 30 seconds. I love this thing. It makes it so when you down someone, everyone else around them gets slowed down by 20%. It's a really cool idea. Really, really fun on characters like Bubba as well. It gives you just... It's scary as a survivor too, which is why I like the perk, so yeah, happy with it. Force Penance. Whenever a survivor takes a protection hit, they gain broken for 80 seconds. This has like a fine idea, I think, but the perk effect is just not good enough. 80 seconds of broken isn't that punishing, especially if you plan on chasing the survivor right afterwards, and so I think honestly this perk needs a more substantial rework to be a better counter to people taking protection hits. Forever Entwined. Another one of my favorite perks, honestly. Whenever a survivor takes damage, you earn 1 token up to 8. For each token, you hook survivors 4% faster, and you pick up and drop them 4% faster. This is such a nice quality of life one, where you're grabbing survivors much quicker, and you throw them on hooks really quickly. It feels great, and it's a great time save, I think, especially when you're in sort of like the crunch time in the late game. I wouldn't do anything to this one. It's great. Double thumbs up for that one. Franklin's Demise. Whenever you damage a survivor with a basic attack, they drop their item. Within 64 meters, you see the auras of dropped items. I'm going to do a bit of a hot take here and say this is completely fine. Yes, it's an annoying perk to face, but I think it is functionally completely fine. Friends till the end. Whenever you hook a survivor that is not the obsession gains exposed for 20 seconds, and you see the obsession's aura for 10 seconds. Whenever you hook the obsession, another survivor screams, then you're alerted, and they become the obsession. This one's quite good. Again, I kind of like the idea of this being paired up with something like Alien Instinct, where you see the furthest away person, but they get oblivious and exposed. I would say maybe this could happen in the same way for this perk, where the obsession could also become oblivious. I don't think that'd be too powerful, because you've only got a 20-second window to down them anyway. So this perk often relies on the obsession being close to you regardless, so I think that'd be a fine change. Yeah. Furtive Chase. Whenever you hook the obsession, you gain 10% haste for 18 seconds, and you gain undetectable for 18 seconds. I actually really like this perk. I think this is pretty fine. Again, maybe try out some number buffs, you know, maybe try out a longer duration, maybe try a longer duration of haste, or higher percentage of haste. I think maybe try out some different things, but otherwise, I like the core idea of the perk, and I think currently it's pretty good. Game Afoot. This is a really cool perk, but it's kind of useless. While chasing the obsession, whenever you basic break pallets or breakable walls, or damage generators, you gain 7% haste for 10 seconds. Whenever you damage the survivor with the most chase time with a basic attack, they become the obsession. So this tries to make it so when you're chasing the best player in the game, basically, you get a haste bonus every time you break a pallet, which is a really cool idea. I just think this number needs to be probably quite a bit higher. Maybe they could even do 10% haste for 10 seconds. I just think currently it's not enough. They could even maybe add in some kind of baseline brutal strength ability, like a 10% extra pallet kick bonus. That way you get a faster break and a haste bonus. That'd be pretty strong then, I think. Because remember, this is only when you're chasing the survivor with the longest chase time. So it's sort of like the best survivor in the match that you're getting the buffs against, which I think it's already like fairly niche, and so doing this wouldn't be that bad. Gearhead. Whenever a survivor takes damage for the next 30 seconds, whenever a survivor repairing a generator hits a good skill check, you see their aura for 8 seconds. I honestly think nowadays this is fine. This perk has been through some truly terrible states, but I think currently this is about fine. The fact that it's so easy to activate, you just need to damage them, and then anywhere around you see auras, like I think this is fine. Genetic limits. Whenever a survivor takes damage, they gain exhausted for 8 seconds. This was reworked, I think, fairly recently, because I didn't even know this perk did this. I still thought it was in its old version. This seems honestly pretty fine to me, just a instantly applied exhaustion, especially because you could pretty easily deny things like dead hard with this, so I'm gonna say that's actually fine. Yeah. Grim Embrace. Maybe a perk to nerf, possibly. Whenever you hook a survivor for the first time, you get 1 token. When you move 60 meters away from the hook survivor, all gens are blocked for 10 seconds. When you have 4 tokens, when you move 60 meters away from the hook survivor, all gens are blocked 40 seconds, and you see the obsession's aura for 10 seconds. So basically, for every first hook you get on each survivor, when you walk 60 meters away from the hook, it blocks all the gens for 10 seconds. And then when you've done this 4 times for all 4 survivors uniquely, it does this for 40 seconds. This is honestly quite powerful. However, it is only the first time you hook each person, so whilst it does feel very good, I do think maybe it's fine in its current iteration, because it only blocks gens for 10 seconds, which is kind of the problem with some of those other gen blocking perks, like DMS, for example, which is a much longer duration. I think this is actually fine, just being 10 seconds. So I'm actually going to say Grim Embrace is okay. Onto the H's, or do you say H's? Do you say H's or H's? It's H's, by the way. Haywire. Exit gate switches with at least 80% progress regress at 100% speed. While they are regressing, survivors see the exit gate's lights flicker randomly. The main problem with this, honestly, is the fact that it restricts it to only 80% progress at least. I think this could actually be pretty strong if they just made it so exit gates regress at 100% speed if survivors aren't holding on to them. This means, for one, survivors can't 99 the exit gates, but it also means killers can push them off the exit gates and gain themselves some time. So I think that'd be the better effect here. This is already a super niche effect. Make it work properly. Help Wanted. Back-to-back Springtrap perks. Whenever you damage a generator, it is compromised. When that generator is completed by survivors, your basic attack cooldowns are 25% shorter for 60 seconds. Only one generator can be compromised at a time. Maybe an adjustment to this would just be to make it so you can compromise as many generators as you like. And then I think this would actually be pretty good, honestly. Yeah, I'd say that. Hex Blood Favor. When the trial starts, a dull totem ignites. Whenever you damage a survivor, upright pallets within 32 meters of them are blocked for 15 seconds. I think this is completely fine, really good. Hex Crowd Control. The first time a survivor medium or fast vaults a window, a dull totem ignites. The last 6 windows survivors medium or fast vault are blocked. You basic vault blocked windows 15% faster, and you see the auras of blocked windows within 24 meters. This I think is also pretty fine. It's a bit of a downside that it's a hex, but it would be way too overpowered if it wasn't, so maybe remove the cap on the number of windows it can block. I don't think that's going to do much, but I think that wouldn't be such a bad thing. That could be quite interesting actually. The whole map gets slowly locked down, and so you have to get that totem eventually, otherwise you're going to be kind of screwed over. Hex Devour Hope. I really love this perk. Whenever you hook a survivor, and you're at least 24 meters away, when they get saved, you earn a token up to 5, and for each token you gain a bit of a bonus. First of all, you gain a small haste bonus. At 3 tokens, all survivors become exposed, and then at 5, you're able to kill down survivors. So this is great. This is a great sort of progression type of perk. Really scary perk, and yeah, it's great. I've said it's great loads, it's great. Hex Face the Darkness. We're into all the hexes now, I just realized. Whenever you damage a survivor, they are hexed and a dull totem ignites. Every 25 seconds, other survivors not within your terror radius scream, and you see their auras for 2 seconds. This is another one I actually think is completely fine, especially because the totem always also extinguishes itself afterwards. This makes it so you can use the perk repeatedly, and it's pretty strong, I think. So this is fine. Hex Haunted Ground. This is one that definitely needs a change and is quite outdated nowadays. This makes it so it spawns 2 hex totems into the trial, and if either of these are cleansed, it makes all survivors exposed for 60 seconds. The main problem with this is just assuming you can get enough value from 60 seconds of exposed, which often isn't really the case. I think for this one, it needs to be a minimum of 90 seconds, honestly, because it should realistically, I think at least, guarantee at least like 2 downs. And I think 90 seconds should be enough for that, or at least a good amount of pressure in that time. So I'd say 90 seconds. Hex Hive Mind. This is another one I really like, and I actually think is completely fine. This one allows you to see the auras of all the generators, and actually the progress of them too, based on the sort of temperature of the aura. And when there's 1 generator remaining, all generators explode and lose 10% progress and start regressing. Overall, I think this is really solid. This doesn't need a change. Hex Huntress Lullaby. One that's really interesting and probably should use a buff. Whenever you hook a survivor, you earn 1 token up to 5, and for each of these tokens, it makes skill checks progressively harder to hit for survivors. It does things like delay the sound you hear until eventually the sound completely disappears, and it makes the skill check very hard to hit. I think the thing that could maybe buff this is if they also added in a faster skill check as well, so the sound gets separated and then also make the skill check go a bit quicker. I think that could be pretty cool, honestly, for this. Yeah, and that would actually make this very punishing then as well, if the skill check went around super quickly. Yeah. Hex Noed, or No One Escapes Death, I should say. When all generators are completed, a dull totem ignites, survivors gain exposed, and you gain 4% haste. And survivors are also able to see this totem when they're within 24 meters of it. So this is overall fine nowadays. It's still very strong, but I don't think it needs a buff. It doesn't need a nerf. It's in a pretty good spot. It's got an inbuilt counter. So what more can you want as a survivor? This is honestly fine. Oftentimes it activates and survivors find it right away, and you're out of a job, out of a kill, out of an endgame. Hex Nothing But Misery. After you damage survivors with a basic attack 8 times, a dull totem ignites. Whenever you damage a survivor with a basic attack, they gain 5% hindered for 15 seconds. I would say the main problem with this is the fact that it takes 8 basic attack hits to even activate this. I would maybe even say they could just widen this out into all damage. Damage a survivor 8 times, and then this activates. Because it is decently punishing as well, the effect. But remember, it's still a hex. It can still, once this is active, it can still then be broken. So I think for this one, it needs to maybe activate a little bit sooner to kick in. Maybe even just right away have this active at the start. Potentially lower the duration of hindered though, if they were going to do that. But there's different options here for this one. Hex Overture of Doom. Perks, I have no idea what they do. When the trial starts, a dull totem ignites and hex
hex is the farthest generator from it. After a survivor repairs the hex generator for 5 seconds, you gain undetectable for 30 seconds, and for that time your terror radius is set to that generator. This just doesn't seem like a very good perk, and I don't really know why it's a hex either. I guess it's because it continually removes the hex and changes it around. Once this activates once though, you can probably get an idea of where the hex is as a survivor, right? You can guess it from the furthest point. I don't know, this doesn't sound very good though, and this also sounds kind of overly complicated for what is essentially 30 seconds of undetectable, and also the same kind of effect where you're applying a terror radius onto a generator, which generally speaking is not too useful. This is also kind of bad because it's a random generator that's getting this effect presumably, so I don't know, I think this kind of has a lot of holes and flaws. I would maybe say just rework this one entirely, or you just have to buff the numbers up like a ton, you know, like double or triple the undetectable, because currently that's just like not good. Hex Pentimento, honestly such a cool perk. I love this one. This one allows you to actually rekindle totems once they've been broken, and for each totem you rekindle you get a different kind of effect. At a baseline, when you rekindle a totem, survivors get a reduction to heals and repair speeds by 20%, and then you get an additional 3% for each time you rekindle another totem, which makes this very strong and punishing, by the way. And if you manage to get all 5, it has the really cool effect of permanently blocking off all the totems for the remainder of the match, which I think means you get a permanent, what would that be, 32% reduction to repairs and heals, which is ridiculously high. That's like game over at that point. I would maybe even debate this could have a slight nerf, because that baseline 20% is actually like super high. This could probably be like 15%, maybe a little bit lower. I suppose again it is a hex and people can still just remove it, but yeah, I don't know. Hex Plaything, another strong but I think pretty balanced hex actually. The first time you hook each survivor they are hexed and a dull totem ignites. For 90 seconds the hex totem is blocked to other survivors, and the hex survivor gains a permanent oblivious effect, and they're able to also see their totem that's tied to them. So basically there's a totem tied to you after you get hooked, and it makes you oblivious until you break that totem. This is really good. Oblivious is actually a pretty strong effect. It's pretty up there, I'd say, in status effects for killers. And so I think this is probably fine. I'm not really sure what I'd even do to this. I think this is literally fine. It's great in so many builds as well. Hex Retribution. So this is a sort of almost like a hex that aims to punish people for cleansing hexes. And it makes it so the trial starts with a dull totem igniting, and whenever a survivor starts blessing or cleansing a totem, they gain Oblivious for 60 seconds, and then whenever a hex totem is blessed or cleansed, you see the auras of all survivors for 20 seconds. I think the thing they could do with this, because there's only 5 totems in the match, bear in mind, I think they could very, very easily make this just activate all of the time, regardless of the hex totem. Just make it so whenever a totem is blessed or cleansed, you see the auras of all survivors for 20 seconds. I don't really know why this needs the hex totem stipulation there, especially because you get the Oblivious when you start doing it, which is great. I do like that. Maybe even flip this so you get the Oblivious for cleansing or blessing a hex, or starting doing those things, but then they give you the aura time on regular totems, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Hex Ruin, another pretty healthy hex I think nowadays, which has been through so many iterations. It's actually kind of crazy how many times this perk can be changed. When the trial starts, a dull totem ignites. While a generator is not being repaired, it regresses at 150% speed. Awesome, I like it. Hex Scared to Death. After you hook 3 different survivors, a dull totem ignites. While chasing a survivor, whenever you basic break a pallet, survivors within 13 meters scream and gain 13% hindered for 3 seconds. This one a bit like, was it Nothing But Misery, I think it was called? It's kind of got the same problem, I think, where it's activating like mid-game, and then the effect it's giving is just not that great. In fact, this is like just a worse version of that, right? Because it only activates on basic breaks, and it causes 13% hindered for 3 seconds, which is very high hindered, but it's not like that amazing, especially if like a survivor champion of lights you or something. Like, this is going to do nothing. So maybe make it, I don't know, maybe make it active all the time for 1, because it's a hex again. Remember, it can be broken. Maybe do that. It doesn't need the 3 hook requirement to start. The 13s are a little bit like, I know it's meant to be tied to Jason, but I feel like those numbers should probably be tweaked to something more like, something more normal, like 16 meters we usually have for these kinds of things. And then the 13% hinder for 3 seconds is probably fine, to be honest. Maybe make it 15 15 or 16 to make it even as well. Hex the Third Seal. This is the absolute solo queue destroyer, this perk. This thing is so powerful. When the trial starts, a dull totem ignites. Whenever you damage a survivor with a basic or special attack, they gain blindness. This applies to all 4 survivors when you hit them. The main problem with this and blindness as a whole is the fact that in a coordinated team, it does very little, I would say. However, in solo queue, this can absolutely kill teams, especially ones who aren't paying attention, because if they lose sight of that initial hook, the only time they're going to see their teammate getting hooked is when the big bubble comes up when they get hooked. So this thing can absolutely kill solo queue teams when they aren't paying attention, because once that teammate has disappeared from that initial bubble, they don't have their location. So this can be really, really, really strong. I do think maybe blindness is a bit too weak alone though. Maybe it could be like blindness and oblivious or something. Something a little bit more punishing, I think, could be interesting. Because again, it's a hex, remember. It's like this is meant to be a sort of almost like a glass cannon type of effect. Hex, Thrill of the Hunt. This has been causing a lot of problems. When the trial starts, a dull totem ignites. For each dull and hex totem remaining, you have 1 token. For each token, survivors bless and cleanse totems 12% slower. So this means at the start of the trial, I think it means it takes 60% longer. This, if anything, should probably be the other way around, where the less totems you have, the longer it takes to cleanse them. I think that'd be better, because then it'd actually make it more of like it'd make it a better piece of like a full hex build or something, wouldn't it? Whereas at the moment, it actually buffs you early on, which seems kind of less fair, if anything. So I'd maybe flip this around and just do it that way, and then I think it'd probably be fine. So it starts off with 12, and then it scales to 60 by the final totem. I think that'd be fine, I think. Hex 2 can play. Really cool perk. While this hex is dull, each time you are blinded or stunned by a survivor 2 times, a dull totem ignites. Whenever you are blinded or stunned by a survivor you are not carrying, they are blinded for 1.5 seconds. Okay, so for 1, again, remove the activation on this. I don't think it should require being blinded or stunned 2 times to activate. Just have that be the baseline. It's a hex. It should be strong. So remove that part entirely, and then match the blind to the duration of your blind, because this perk works where if a survivor blinds you, you blind them back, but you blind them for a shorter duration. What this needs to do is match the blind time. If they blind you, you're blinded for the same time. That'd be great. Hex Undying. When the trial starts, a dull totem ignites. When another hex totem is blessed or cleansed, it replaces the one and keeps any tokens it had. You see the auras of survivors within 4 meters of dull totems. I actually like this. I think this is fine, especially now that it carries on the stacks, which it didn't used to do. I say used to, this was like 3 or 4 years ago now, I think. But yeah, I think this is fine now. I like this. Hex Wretched Fate. This is another one I don't remember at all. The first time a generator is completed, a dull totem ignites. The obsession repairs 33% slower and sees the hex totem's aura within 12 meters. This one, again, it's a hex. Why is this so weak? Like, why does this need this initial activation? Why not just have this active at the start? Maybe we can make this into more of a punishment for repairing a generator. Maybe it can instead be that everyone who repairs a generator gets afflicted with the 33% slower repair speed, and everyone who is on that generator also sees the hex totem tied to them. That would be better, because then that would make a flow of you have to repair a gen and then go break the totem respective to it to regain your regular repair speed. I think that'd be better than this. Next up, we've got Hoarder. When the trial starts, 2 more chests appear. Whenever a survivor picks up an item or starts unlocking a chest, within 60 meters of you, you are alerted. This is terrible because it's tied to chests, as I've said like so many times throughout this video. Chests and chest perks are stupid and silly and dumb, and they should all be obliterated unless they're going to do something meaningful. Adding more chests in the trial is bad, and the secondary effect is quite good. That can stay. I like that. The idea I had for this actually was to make it so all chests relocate to the basement. I think that could be cool. That also plays into the idea of Hoarder as a perk. You're hoarding the chests as the killer, and it makes it so if survivors want items, they have to go down to the basement. They have to go down into a dangerous area in order to retrieve them. I think that'd be super cool. Hubris. Whenever you are stunned by a survivor, they gain exposed for 30 seconds with a cooldown of 20 seconds. I think this could actually be a bit higher, because a bit like I've said for a bunch of the survivor side perks, stunning the killer doesn't happen all too frequently. So I think this actually needs to be higher as a bit of a greater punishment. Maybe 45 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. Let's have some tests. Let's run some tests, make it higher. Human Greed, another chest perk.
Whenever a survivor gets within 8 meters of a locked chest, you see their aura for 5 seconds. You can unlock chests. Cooldown 10 seconds. You see the aura of locked chests. I like the idea of being able to close chests. That's pretty cool. But this is just like so useless. Like, what's the point in closing a chest? Like, rework the whole thing. Hysteria. Whenever a healthy survivor becomes injured, all injured survivors gain Oblivious for 40 seconds. Cooldown 20 seconds. I actually really like this one. However, I think, again, just buff the numbers, maybe add this up, maybe bump this up to like 60 seconds instead. I'm all ears. Also love this perk. Whenever a survivor fast vaults or fast exits a locker, or medium or fast vaults within 48 meters of you, you see their aura for 8 seconds, cooldown 30 seconds. This is great. I think the only thing they could do to this is maybe knock the cooldown down a little bit. I think that'd be fine. Yup. Infectious Fright. Another perk I think is actually perfectly healthy and fine. Whenever a survivor is down, survivors within your terror radius scream and you're alerted for 6 seconds. I think that's really great. It does the job. It fulfills its own niche as well, and it's actually strong at it. So yeah, great job. Interestingly, many of the perks that just have a simple, straightforward effect with a strong sort of baseline element to them are some of the best perks in the game. Who would have thought? Insidious. This is a bad example of a simple perk. After being idle for 1 second, you gain undetectable until you act. Now, the main problem with this is just, well, I suppose this is kind of a niche, but it's also a niche where it's like, nowadays, it doesn't really do much. Back in the day, you could kind of use this to camp and do that kind of thing. I don't even know like what you'd use this for nowadays. Maybe you could kind of use it for like a dragon's grip pair up or something. I don't quite understand, so I'm not really sure what you'd do with this. It is also one of those perks though where I'm kind of glad it exists because it fulfills that sort of unique role of doing this thing, and so therefore I kind of want to leave it as it is. Maybe it could just be like whenever you stand still you gain undetectable. You don't have to wait a second, you just instantly become undetectable whenever you're still, because this means you could kind of use it mid-loop, right? You could even use it on characters like, I don't know, like a small character, you know, who can sort of hide mid-loop. They could hide behind things. That could be really useful, couldn't it? If you're like Chucky or someone, for example, you could just stand in the middle of a loop and you go undetectable instantly. Like, that could be really strong actually. So maybe just make it instant. That could be pretty good. Iron Grasp, another simple one that I think fulfills its role well and does the job and doesn't really need to change. This just makes it so when you're carrying a survivor, they wiggle 12% slower and their wiggle is 75% weaker. So you have a bit of a stronger sort of pathway when you're walking. You don't wiggle around and go woo 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 so much. It's nice. People usually do pair this up with other things. Maybe this could use a merger with something like agitation. I don't know, but I think it's fine. Okay, onto the eyes. Actually, no, we've been on the eyes for a while. Iron Maiden. Whenever a survivor exits a locker, they gain exposed for 30 seconds, and they scream for 4 seconds. And you also open lockers 50% faster. This is a super niche perk, but also what it does do pretty well, I think. And also it has its pairings. It's good for reload characters like Huntress and Trickster, so I don't know if I'd actually change this really. I think it's actually quite effective for what it is. Maybe you could buff the exposed up to be longer. Possibly. I don't know. Or you could even make it like a hidden exposed or something, but then maybe that'd be too unfair. I don't know. Not sure. Knockout. Whenever a survivor drops a pallet, for the next 6 seconds, if they move 6 meters away from it, they gain 5% hindered for 5 seconds. I didn't know this perk did this. I thought this was still the old version Knockout where it made you like undetectable when on the ground. This sounds okay. I would say again, maybe just remove the stipulation of the next 6 seconds, you know? This is also kind of bad because it doesn't really punish survivors for staying in a loop once they've dropped a pallet, which is like, I don't know if there's much benefit to that. Maybe just make it so this activates regardless after 6 seconds. So they can run and it activates, or they can stay and it activates. I think that'd be fine. It's only 5% hindered for 5 seconds, so I think that'd be fine. And it'd make chases a bit more tolerable. Languid Touch. Whenever a survivor within 36 meters of you scares a crow, they gain exhausted for 10 seconds. Cooldown 5 seconds. This one, I think, again, maybe just remove the limit. Maybe don't make it 36 meters, just make it if a survivor scares a crow, they get exhausted for 10 seconds. There's already enough ridiculous limitations for perks like this. I think just make it like map wide. I don't think that'd be that bad. 10 seconds of exhausted is hardly like this be all and end all, is it? So I think it's fine. Lethal Pursuer, another perk I think is honestly pretty healthy. When the trial starts, you see the auras of all survivors for 9 seconds. Whenever you see a survivor
Survivor's aura, for a duration, it is 2 seconds longer. This is great. I think this does its job well, and I like the additional little bonus effect, so nice. Leverage. Whenever a survivor unhooks another or themselves, they heal 30% slower for 60 seconds. This is kind of fine. It stops people from healing off of hook, which is pretty effective. Again, I think maybe you could buff this up even more though, because all people do currently is they just delay the heal. So maybe just make it like 50%, really discourage them from healing. I think that'll be fine. Let's do that. Lightborn. I hate this perk. I think it's really boring and unfun, and I hate how it basically removes an entire mechanic from the survivor side. Whenever a survivor attempts to blind you, you see their aura for 10 seconds, and you cannot be blinded. I don't like this. I think this is boring. I just don't like how it completely removes the ability to blind on the survivor side. I think make it just take a longer duration. It used to actually be like this. It used to be that it took longer to blind the killer, but it was still possible to do it. I would much rather that be the case, because then at least you could learn Lightborn timings as survivor, and it would take up more flashlight battery, but you could still get the blind. I would much prefer that. And then maybe instead of the aura reveal after you've been blinded, it could give the person who blinded you hindered or something instead, so you can catch them more easily. That'd be a fine trade-off, I think. Yeah. Machine learning. Whenever you damage a generator, it becomes compromised. When that generator is completed by survivors, you gain 8% haste for 60 seconds, and you gain undetectable for 60 seconds. Only one generator can be compromised at a time. Again, I think maybe the thing that needs to be done here is make it so all generators can be compromised, which I know is like, this is quite powerful. 8% haste for 60 seconds is pretty game changing. I do realize that. But in some cases, you don't even get to kick some generators. Sometimes like 2 will pop and you don't even get to kick them. So I think like an average of say 3 activations per game is not that powerful. Test it out with some number changes maybe, but make it so it can apply to as many gens as possible, but maybe then also lower the numbers a little bit to like 6 or 7% haste or something would be better, maybe. Mad Grit. While carrying a survivor, whenever you miss a basic attack, your cooldown is 100% shorter. This lets you go like... Whenever you damage a survivor with a basic attack, the carried survivor gains no wiggle progress for 4 seconds. I'm going to say this is actually okay, again, because it fulfills its very own niche. The only thing I'd maybe say is it kind of needs like a secondary effect when not carrying. It needs like some kind of additional effect, I think. Maybe even like a baseline reduction to post-hit cooldowns. Maybe like this can give you just a baseline 5% or 10% faster post-hit cooldown or something. That could be cool. A bit like 2 stacks of Save the Best for Last, but permanently. That could be pretty cool. I like that idea, actually. Giving this some kind of benefit aside just carrying, which is very, very niche. Make your choice. A perk that kind of sounds strong in theory, but isn't really in practice. Whenever a survivor unhooks another or themselves while you're at least 32 meters away, they scream and gain exposed for 60 seconds. Cooldown 60 seconds. I would say for this one, maybe if you saw their aura or something for a longer duration, as well as the exposed, because then you could get a much better pinpoint on them, and you could actually apply some kind of threat. And maybe in return, they could even make the meter range a bit higher, or something like that. Make it like 48 meters, but they gain exposed for, say, longer, like 90 seconds. And then during this 90 seconds, you see their aura every, I don't know, say 15 or something. Could be kind of cool. So it's like this ongoing actual threat. I think that could work better. At the moment, the problem is you can just avoid this so easily as Survivor. If you get exposed, you've got like plenty of time to go and hide, and I think that's kind of the problem with this. Merciless Storm. The first time each generator has 90% progress, survivors repairing it get special skill checks. If they miss one of these or stop repairing, the generator is blocked for 20 seconds. I think this is perfectly fine. 20 seconds isn't too bad a block, and this is pretty punishing and actually hard to achieve. This gives you continuous, difficult skill checks in the last 10% of a gen, which is actually reduced as well if you've got multiple people on the gen. But then obviously this risks there's a higher risk that someone misses it when there's more people. So I like this. I think this is really solid. I like it. Doesn't need a change. Mind Breaker. While survivors are repairing a generator, they gain blindness and exhausted. When they stop repairing a gen, this ends after 5 seconds. I like it. No need for a change. Monitor and Abuse. While chasing a survivor, your terror radius is 15% larger, while not chasing a survivor, your terror radius is 25% smaller. The only thing with this is I would maybe even out the numbers. Make it so when you're in a chase, it's 25% larger. I think that'd be fine. And then overall, maybe even make these numbers bigger. Or make it 25% larger in chase and like 50% out, because this is all this perk is doing nowadays. It used to have an FOV aspect as well, but seeing as this is all it does now, this could use quite a substantial buff, I think. No. Nemesis. Whenever a survivor blinds you, locker stuns, or pallet stuns you, they become the obsession. I really love that as a mechanic. That is such a cool mechanic. Whenever a survivor becomes the obsession, they gain Oblivious for 60 seconds, and you see their aura for 8 seconds. I quite like this. However, I do wish, again, there was some kind of additional effect, maybe. It's difficult, though. Maybe there could be a short duration of exposed on there, like 20 seconds, which means if you catch them quickly, you can down them very fast. Because again, this activates on like a pallet stun. This doesn't happen very often, so I think that'd be fine adding that in. Maybe even make it 60 seconds. Because again, pallet stuns, they don't happen as often as you think, genuinely. So yeah, I think so. No quarter. While self-healing, whenever a survivor has 75% progress, they get special skill checks. This is a bit like Merciless Storm, but for heals. If they miss one of these or stop healing, they gain Broken for 30 seconds. Cool idea. I think just apply it to all heals. Make this a thing for all of the heals, and then it'd be pretty good. I don't know why this is just self-heals. Make it for all of them, and then maybe up the progress number to like 80% or something to balance it out. No Way Out. The first time you hook each survivor, you earn 1 token. When all generators are completed, when a survivor starts opening an exit gate, it is blocked for 12 seconds, plus 12 seconds for each token. You're alerted. This is great, no need to change it. None are free. I don't remember what this perk does. The first time you hook each survivor, earn 1 token. When all generators are completed, for each token, upright pallets are blocked for 16 seconds, windows are blocked for 16 seconds. I think either this needs to be permanent blocks instead and not even have a token system, or these numbers need to be greatly buffed to like at least double this, like 32 seconds or something, up to 2 minutes, 8 seconds. I think that'd be fine. Nowhere to hide. Whenever you damage a generator for 5 seconds, you see the auras of survivors within 24 meters of you. Lovely. Oppression. I love oppression. Whenever you damage a generator, up to 4 other generators start regressing. Survivors repairing them get a special skill check. Cooldown 35 seconds. This used to be terrible because it had an 80-second cooldown. It's fine now with its 35-second cooldown, and it's actually quite good at applying pressure. So I say this is great. I love this perk. Love oppression. Overcharge. Whenever you damage a generator, its regression speed will go from 85% to 130% over the next 30 seconds. The next survivor who starts repairing it gets a special skill check. If they miss it, they lose 4% more progress. This is good. I would still maybe say it needs a slight nerf. Maybe make it 40-45 seconds for that extra regression to be achieved, because I think 130% extra regression is quite a lot, especially when compared to something like Cooler Brine, say. So I would say maybe nerf this and make the timer a little bit longer. Overwhelming Presence. Whenever a survivor uses an item within 32 meters of you, they gain Exhausted for 15 seconds. Whenever a survivor within 32 meters of you gains Exhausted, you see the closest exhausted survivor's aura for 4 seconds. Cooldown 25 seconds. This used to be kind of bad. It's actually decent nowadays. I still think it's overcomplicated though in its wording. This needs to be kind of simplified, I think, actually. I think keep the first line, but maybe just make the second part into just, if a survivor becomes exhausted in your terror radius, you see them. Or you just see exhausted survivors in your terror radius. Is that so bad? It's already like pretty niche, not that great. Make that an effect. I think it'd be fine. Phantom Fear. I actually really like this one. This one's surprisingly very useful despite it being very simple. Again, simple but effective. Whenever a survivor within your terror radius looks at you, they scream, then you see their aura for 2 seconds. Cooldown 60 seconds. This is great. Maybe even lower the cooldown to like 45 or something. But overall, this is really solid. I love how it's like an easy location tool and it alerts you to hiding survivors. Really good. Play with your food. Another super interesting perk. Whenever you stop chasing the obsession, you earn 1 token up to 3, cooldown 10 seconds. For each token, gain 5% haste. Whenever you attack, lose 1 token. So this allows you to basically chase the obsession, then drop chase, and it gives you a baseline 5% haste, which only goes away when you hit someone, but this can stack up to 3 times up to 15%. The only thing with this I'd maybe say is it needs some kind of like, maybe some buff to the haste numbers, maybe make it like 7% haste, you know, rework it a little bit, because it is time consuming gaining these 3 stacks. Maybe even uncap the stacks. Would that be so bad? That could be kind of interesting actually. I like the idea of doing that, uncap the stacks stacks. You could spend all game chasing someone, but then you get like, I don't know, 250% movement speed. That could be hilarious. I kind of like that idea. Am I crazy? Probably. Maybe stack it up to like 10 tokens max. Pop Goes the Weasel, a regression perk that's been through a whole lot of changes. Whenever you hook a survivor for the next 45 seconds, when you damage a generator, it explodes and loses 15% more progress. I think this is fine. This has been through so many trials and tests. I think it's fine as it is. Predator, when you stop chasing a survivor, you see the aura for 4 seconds. Cooldown 40 seconds. So this basically lets you see the aura of a survivor who's managed to drop your chase, basically, or you've dropped them. But I think the idea basically is that if a survivor manages to get away from you, you see them essentially. I think this is great. I think maybe even just remove the cooldown. That wouldn't be too bad. And I think this would actually be pretty worthwhile. A lot of the time too, when you lose the survivor you're chasing, you're not going to bother chasing them again if they're super far away. So removing the cooldown here doesn't really change much, I think. So get rid of that. Rampage, when you basic break a pallet or breakable wall, you earn 1 token up to 13. This is another one of those Jason 13 perks. Whenever you are blinded or pallet stunned for the next 13 seconds, you gain 1% haste for each token, cooldown 20 seconds. I think the main problem with this is that it takes a very long time to charge these up, especially because breaking pallets throughout a match is going to take some time. And then again, it only applies when you are blinded or pallet stunned. And getting pallet stunned does not happen very frequently. I think that's the problem. Maybe if this was reworked to make it so when a survivor drops a pallet, these effects activate, that could work pretty well. That could actually be very effective, because that means when people pre-drop lots early into the match and you continue breaking pallets, every time they're actually kind of buffing you. I think that could work out. Currently though, getting pallet stunned, it's such a silly activation. It's a bit like, I don't know, anything to do with chest perks for the survivor side, or a bit like Metal of Man activating on only protection hits. It's a silly activation, I think, activating purely on stuns, unless the effect is like hyper strong. Rancor, whenever a generator is completed, you are alerted to the position of all survivors for 3 seconds. The obsession sees your aura for 3 seconds. When all gens are completed, the obsession gains exposed and you can kill the obsession. I love this perk. I think it's really unique, and I also like how you can kind of kill the obsession as well at the end. I think it's a fun little extra thing onto this, and also it's good tracking throughout the game in a unique way as well that isn't aura based, which I quite like. So yeah, aside maybe extending the numbers a little bit, I think that's fine. Rapid Brutality, whenever you damage a survivor with a basic attack, you gain 5% haste for 10 seconds. While chasing a survivor, you cannot gain Bloodlust. This is quite a big nerf, because removing the ability to gain Bloodlust is quite a big deal. I would say for this to be better, they maybe need to up the haste to like 6 or 7%, and then it'd be better, because 10 seconds of 5% haste does very little in reality. Certainly not enough, I think, to even out Bloodlust. So yeah, buff the haste numbers, or buff the duration of haste. One of the two. Ravenous. The first time you hook each survivor, you earn 1 token. Whenever you have 4 tokens, all survivors scream and gain exposed for 60 seconds. Another really cool perk, but a bit like Haunted Ground, this needs a much longer duration, especially because this requires you to hook each survivor individually, which doesn't always even happen every game. So in many ways, this is actually weaker, I would say, than Haunted Ground in some ways. So this needs to be, if anything, like double, like 120 seconds, because currently 60 seconds of expose for hooking everyone once each time is not enough. It's just not enough. The alternate to this is maybe make it a bit like Grim Embrace, which is the gen blocking counterpart of this perk, and make it so every time you hook a survivor for the first time, you gain exposed for 20 seconds, say, and then when all four have been hooked, you gain it for 60 seconds. That would be better. Or maybe 30 seconds into 90 seconds would be better. Yeah, I like that. Remember Me. Whenever the obsession takes damage, you earn 1 token up to 5. For each token, survivors who are not the obsession open exit gates 30% slower. This is a really cool perk, and is very good actually for delaying the end game. I would say it's a little annoying how it's only tied to the obsession though, which can be a little bit problematic. Maybe if they added in some kind of mechanic where you can move the obsession with this perk, so you can more evenly spread the sort of token gains, that'd be a bit better, I think. Yeah, because currently this all being tied to one survivor is a little bit annoying, because it basically requires you to fully kill the obsession to get these 5 hits. So yeah, I think that needs to be adjusted. I've played so many games with this perk where you don't even get the stacks, and I feel like that's kind of silly. If it's only going to work in the end game, it should have pretty much all those stacks by the time you get there. So yeah. Save the best for last. Whenever you damage a survivor who is not the obsession with a basic attack, you earn 1 token up to 8. For each token, your basic basic attack cooldowns are 4% shorter. Whenever the obsession takes damage, lose 2 tokens. While the obsession is dead, you cannot earn tokens. I actually didn't realize they lowered the numbers on this down to 4%. I think it used to be 5%. I would say return it to being 5%, honestly. Yeah, I think so. Make this 5% again, and that'd be great. It's still a very solid perk, but 5% would be preferable. Ooh, so we're on to the Scourge hooks now. Scourge hook, Floods of Rage. When the trial starts, 4 random hooks become Scourge hooks. Whenever a survivor is unhooked from a Scourge hook, you see the auras of other survivors for 7 seconds. I think this is honestly quite good. I don't think this really needs a change. It does its job well. It gives you aura locations when someone gets unhooked from a Scourge. Yeah, I think it's fine. Scourge hook, Gift of Pain. Same thing, 4 hooks get selected at the start of the trial. Whenever a survivor is unhooked from a Scourge hook, they gain Hemorrhage and Mangled for 90 seconds, and when they get healed, until they take damage, they heal and repair 16% slower. This overall is good. I would maybe just say the Hemorrhage and Mangled should be permanent until they get healed. Would that be so bad? I don't think that'd be that bad. Again, it's 4 hooks in the trial. You're not even guaranteed to get these. Maximum of 12 applications per match. Is this so bad? I don't think so. Scourge hook, Hangman's Trick. Again, 4 random hooks get selected. While carrying a survivor, you see the auras of survivors within 16 meters of Scourge hooks. Whenever a survivor starts sabotaging a hook, you are alerted. This is terrible, and this perk has gone through so many changes. It used to not even be a Scourge hook. I think it needs a complete rework, because this as like an anti-sabotage mechanic is just not it. It just doesn't cut it. And also it's super niche. Sabotaging is not that frequent, I think, and this doesn't even help you much, honestly. Most of the time you can see when someone's sabotaging. Sometimes you can't, sure, but running a whole perk for that specific thing is not worthwhile. And the secondary effect of seeing survivor auras within 60 meters of other Scourge hooks, it's bizarre. At least make it all hooks, not just Scourges. Like, it's so weird. So, I don't know. Maybe just make it so Scourge hooks cannot be sabotaged, you know? Isn't that a lot better? Isn't that a better thing? Then you know, okay, I've got 4 hooks on my map that cannot be sabotaged. Those are safe hooks for me. I think that'd be fine, especially if you're running a whole perk for that. And then also add in the aura. Or completely rework the perk, because this is just Scourge hook, a Jagged Compass. Again, 4 hooks selected. Whenever a survivor is unhooked, the hook becomes a Scourge hook. Whenever you hook a survivor on a Scourge hook, for 10 seconds you see the aura of the generator with the most progress. I quite like this, but I think maybe it needs some kind of bonus to when you go and kick the generator with the most progress. It should show you the gen with the most progress, and then maybe you should also get some kind of pop effect, where when you go and kick that gen, it regresses it an additional amount. Maybe it can be smaller than something like pop, because this is less dedicated, so like 10%, say, of the current progress gets knocked off. But I think it needs some kind of bonus aside just telling you what the most progressed gen is. Or even just instantly regressing it and telling you would be good. Yeah. Scourge hook, Monstrous Shrine. When the trial starts, 4 random hooks are selected, and also the basement hooks become Scourge hooks, which is quite interesting. While you're at least 24 meters away from a survivor on a Scourge hook, they are sacrificed 20% faster. See, this is kind of interesting as a mechanic, and it's not as awful as it used to be. I do think it's kind of unhealthy trying to make people die faster, though. I will say that. It does encourage you to not camp, though, which is something. So it's not the most terrible. People still don't really use this, though. Maybe if they buff the numbers even more, I don't know. But then I worry it just becomes the thing where people are speedrunning kills and they're camping from a range and doing that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't know if it's healthy if you buff the numbers too much, but also I'm not sure what else you can do with it. Maybe you could even combine the effects of Monstrous Shrine with Hangman's Trick. That wouldn't be so bad. That kind of makes sense as well with the basement hooks turning into Scourges. Not a terrible idea. I think that'd be right. Scourge hook, Pain Resonance, another perk that's been through a ton of iterations. Again, you start off with 4 hooks that become Scourges, and you have 4 tokens at base. Each of these tokens representing the first time you hook each survivor. When you hook each survivor for the first time, it regresses 20% of the most progressed generator. This, I think, is honestly fine in its current state. It is strong. It could maybe use a very slight nerf, maybe down to 15% or something, but overall I think it's pretty fair, so I'm going to say it's okay. Alright, we're out of the Scourges. Secret Project. Whenever a totem is blessed or cleansed, a random unblocked generator is blocked for 30 seconds. Whenever 1 or more generators are blocked, you gain Undetectable for 30 seconds. I think this is honestly kind of fine, and often works out quite well in gen block builds. This is really good with perks like Thrilling Tremors, for example. example, the secondary effect on this is really, really good. Maybe I'd just say buff the undetectable duration, because undetectable is strong, but it's not always too much of a game changer. So I think that could be 45 seconds maybe, and it'd be fine. Maybe even make the first one 45 seconds. Then it'd be very good in a hex build as well. Yep, that'd be fine. They get people to use the perk more. Septic Touch. While a survivor within your terror radius is healing, they gain blindness and they gain exhausted. When they stop healing, this ends after 30 seconds. I would maybe just widen this out to just healing in general, honestly. If a survivor's healing, they gain blindness and exhausted, and this stops after 30 seconds. I think that'd be fine. Maybe that seems insane, but realistically, it's like, it exposes the survivor rate is the point of this. And if you're nearby, they're exhausted, so they can't use like Dead Hard or whatever. Yeah, remove the terror radius part. It doesn't need these little stipulations. That's why like most of these killer perks are bad, because they have these like weird requirements. They have these weird little stipulations in front of them. And it's just like, if you just remove that part, the perk's pretty good. It's not like OP still, but it's actually like quite usable. Shadowborn. This is dreadful perks. Terrible. This was ruined ever since they changed the FOV slider thing, because this used to give you a wider FOV. It was like the one unique thing it did, and now it's terrible. Whenever you are blinded, gain 10% haste for 10 seconds. It's not worth it. I mean, yeah, maybe merge it with like Shadowborn, right? Have it so you can't be blinded, or Lightborn, sorry, not Shadowborn. Merge it with itself. Make it so you can't be blinded, and you see the survivor aura, and you get 10% haste when they try to blind you. That'd be better. I don't know why it's two separate perks. That's silly. Shattered Hope, a perk that was made for a problem that was solved by the time it released, which was boons being very powerful. By the time this was like the answer to powerful boons, but by the time this came out, boons had been nerfed already. So this became like completely useless. It still is. This makes it so whenever you kick a totem or you snuff out a boon totem, it permanently destroys the totem, and it also reveals the auras of survivors within its range. This isn't good. This is kind of pointless and useless, and honestly, the amount of boons even you see in games nowadays is kind of low. And even then, breaking the boons nowadays is just not so useful because they're not OP anymore, which is why this perk was created. Maybe just make this a base game mechanic. When you snuff a boon, it just breaks the totem. Like, would that be so bad? Is that such a problem? I don't think so. Nope. I think that'd be fine. Silent Shadow. Whenever you hook a survivor, you gain undetectable for 13 seconds. Another one of those Jason 13 perks. When all generators are completed, you gain undetectable. I think this is actually fine. I just wish it didn't have the 13 stipulation. It could be like 30 seconds and this would be fine, but I don't know why it has to be 13. So I think just remove that part, and this is a pretty good perk. I quite like it. Sloppy Butcher, another pretty simple, healthy perk, I think, that actually does its job really well, fulfills what it needs to. Whenever you damage a survivor with a basic attack, they gain hemorrhage and also mangled for 90 seconds. Survivors with hemorrhage lose healing progress 25% faster. Solid. I like it. Spies from the Shadows. Whenever a survivor scares a crow within 36 meters of you, you are alerted. Cooldown 5 seconds. Maybe a bit of a ballsy move, but I think make this map wide and make it aura based instead, so you can more easily miss it instead of having the explosions with the crows. Although it does look cool. It does look cool. That would be a shame to lose that. But maybe make it aura based. When a survivor disturbs a crow, it shows you that aura for 3 seconds. This would make it a genuinely strong tracking tool, but also survivors could easily counter this by just being calmer around the crows, because it'd obviously pop up on the HUD that you have this perk, so they could still avoid it, which I think would be fine. Spirit Fury. After you break 2 pallets, when you are pallet stunned, the pallet is destroyed. I would say this is kind of fine as well. In some ways, I want to just say maybe it just needs to be a 1-to-1 even. You break a pallet, you get a pallet break when you get stunned, because again, getting stunned is not, it doesn't happen that frequently. It really doesn't. So I think make it a 1-to-1 and it'd be better. Starstruck. I really love this perk. This one's super cool. While carrying a survivor, survivors within your terror radius gain exposed. This ends 30 seconds after. They either leave your terror radius or you drop the survivor you're carrying, and there's a 60-second cooldown. I think this is pretty great. It's good for countering people body blocking. It's good for hunting down people just after you've hooked someone, and making in general your terror radius a bit more dangerous. I like this. Maybe they could extend the time slightly, but I think 30 seconds is fairly appropriate for what it does. Maybe like 40-45 could be worth trialing, but I'm not too sure on that. Strider. Survivors' breathing noises are 25% louder and their grunts of pain are 50% louder. This is kind of like the spirit perk that people don't even really use anymore. At least I don't know. I don't really play spirit. Maybe people do. Maybe people still use this. This is kind of niche. It kind of fulfills what it needs to though. So other than making the sounds just like even louder, I think it's kind of fine, because again, it is very unique, but then it's also also like the only perk that really does this, so I think it's probably fine. It's a bit like Insidious in that way. It's like, sure, it's super niche thing, but it does what it does, and no other perk really does that, so leave it as is. Superior Anatomy. Whenever Survivor fast vaults within 12 meters of you, the next time you basic vault a window, it is 40% faster. Cooldown 25 seconds. I think debatably this could just maybe not have a cooldown. Maybe instead make it token based, up to say like 3 tokens. So every time a survivor vaults within 12 meters of you, you gain a token up 3, which then allows you to do this 40% faster vault with no cooldown. Because then you could do some really cool mind games with this, I think, where you vault over something and then you instantly vault back, and you could actually make that like kind of a viable play to actually catch a survivor up. It kind of is anyway, but this would make it really viable. Because this is such a, again, it's such a specific niche perk. It needs to do that thing extremely well, not just like okay, right? Surge. Whenever you down a survivor with a basic attack, generators within 32 meters explode, lose 8% progress and start regressing, and survivors repairing them scream. This is great. It does the job well. Maybe even a little too overtuned, but I'm going to say it's fine. Surveillance. You see the auras of regressing generators. Whenever a generator stops regressing, you see its aura for 16 seconds. Generator repair noises can be heard from 8 meters farther away. I would say, honestly, this is fine. It maybe just needs more of a distinction for when a generator stops regressing, potentially. Make it like an explosion or some kind of like, maybe even like a Killer Instinct sort of heartbeat or something, to make it a little bit more distinct so you know that someone has tapped that generator. I think that could be kind of interesting instead, potentially. Otherwise, I think this is fine. Maybe buff the generator distance noise a little bit as well to like 12 meters or something would be pretty good too. Yeah, kind of buff the passive element. Terminus. This is a cool perk. Not so great, I would say. When all generators are completed, all injured, down, and hook survivors gain broken. When an exegate is opened, this ends after 45 seconds. I would say this just shouldn't end simply. It should just be in the end game, everyone gets broken. Maybe even add hemorrhage in there too, so you get blood pools a bit more frequently, which buffs your tracking very slightly. Something like that could be quite good as well. Yeah, I like that idea. Because again, bear in mind, this is just the end game. It's just an end game perk. Maybe they could even add an additional effect onto this, like every time a gen pops, it applies broken for 30 seconds, which could just mean that like people can be healthy and broken, but then the injured people are broken as well, if that makes sense. Like that could work as well as like a secondary effect. Yeah, I think so. Territorial Imperative. Whenever a survivor enters the basement while you are 24 meters away from it, you see their aura for 6 seconds with a cooldown of 45 seconds. Well, for one, I think this just doesn't need a cooldown. I mean, the effect as a whole is what it is, but it doesn't need a cooldown. I would say, maybe a little controversially, the better effect here would be make it so survivors who go into the basement have their aura permanently revealed. Maybe also make them oblivious or exposed. Maybe oblivious, because exposed could lead to some camping, whereas oblivious could be interesting. And then upon leaving the basement, they keep these effects for say 60 seconds maybe. Make the basement a lot more dangerous. If this is the entire point of the perk, it needs to make the basement dangerous, you know? That's like the problem with these, is it does a niche thing, but it does the niche thing kind of just okay. If it's gonna do this niche thing, it needs to do this niche thing exceptionally. So this needs to be like buffed and make the basement way more dangerous if this is the entire point of the perk, you know? Something like that. Thanatophobia. For each injured, down, or hook survivor, all survivors cleanse totems 2% slower, repair 2% slower, and sabotage hooks 2% slower. While 4 survivors are either injured, down, or hooked, all above actions are additionally 12% slower. So this is the perk you often see on characters like Plague and Legion, ones who are good at injuring an entire team very quickly and efficiently, which honestly makes the perk feel quite unhealthy, I think. I think this would probably be better off if the base numbers were just a bit higher at like 4%, and it just didn't have the additional 12%. I think that'd just be an overall healthier perk, honestly. And it would also make it far more viable for pretty much every other character. So I'd actually say kind of a nerf for this one, I suppose. I would say that's overall just way healthier, isn't it? Because otherwise it's, what is it, like 20% overall it can give you just for having everyone injured? I think if it was, yeah, like 4% per, it would be better off. So an overall of 16 if everyone's injured, but then 4% for individuals. Or like 3.5 maybe. I know that's like a weird number. Maybe like 3.5. So it's like 14% overall. That'd be fairer, I think, for sure. And it would also help more killers rather than just the ones who injure everyone. Thrilling Tremors. Whenever you pick up a survivor, all gens not being repaired are blocked for 16 seconds. Cooldown 30 seconds. I think this is a really great perk. perk and does its job very well. I would say it doesn't need a cooldown. However, I assume the reason why it has one is so you can't just like pick up a survivor, drop them, pick them up again, and just like continually block. I suppose. I don't know why, but that wouldn't be that useful, I don't think, unless the effect stacked or something. Yeah, I think maybe the block duration needs to be a little bit longer, even if it's just like 20 seconds. Just a little bit extra, I think, could be quite helpful for this perk. But I think overall it's pretty solid. Thwack, funny name, kind of just okay perk. Good for countering flashlights, though, interestingly. When the trial starts, you earn 3 tokens up to 3. Whenever you hook a survivor, you earn 1 token. Whenever you break a pallet or breakable wall, spend 1 token, and doing this causes all survivors within 36 meters to scream and reveal their auras for 6 seconds. So this is really good for countering flashlights, because when you kick a pallet and someone's trying to blind you on it, it makes them scream and it kicks their flashlight up like that, which is actually quite useful. But this is also like basically the only use this has, really. This needs some kind of other additional effect, I think. Whether it's a additional duration of hindered or something like that onto this as well. So they scream, they get revealed, and they become hindered. It needs something extra, because currently this is just kind of weak. Maybe extend the range even farther out or something, or even just make it so the nearest survivor screams. That way you can kick a pallet anywhere on the map and you get some kind of information. That could be kind of cool. Also, it's limited because there's only so many pallets and breakable walls. So yeah. Tinkerer. The first time each generator has 70% progress, you gain undetectable for 16 seconds and you are alerted. So this is sort of like to track generator progress and stop it with a little duration of undetectable to sneak up on the gen and stop it. I think this is pretty solid. It doesn't really need a change. This perk has been through some wild changes, by the way. It used to do something completely different. It used to make it so you actually used your power more efficiently, or it actually made add-ons that increase power efficiency more efficient. So it can make it made like Huntress, for example, into a machine gun because she could pair up her wind-up speed add-ons along with Tinkerer and it'd be like... Anyway, tangent. Trail of Torment. Whenever you damage a generator until it stops regressing, you gain undetectable and survivors see that generator's aura. I maybe want to suggest a little bit of a hot change, but that's just remove the ability for survivors to see the gen's aura. Just make it so you're just undetectable until it stops regressing, because either that's a full regression or until survivors tap it. And typically, if you've kicked a decently progressed gen, survivors are probably going to go find it and stop it within about a minute anyway. So I think doing this would not be a problem. Turn back the clock. One of the more powerful / meta perks we've had recently added. After hooking a survivor for the next 60 seconds, use E to make a target generator you can see within 20 meters explode and lose 10% progress and start regressing. I think this is actually completely fine. It's got a limited time. It only does 10% progress, and it requires you to be within a 20-meter range. Maybe a slight nerf. Maybe they could lower the range a little bit, because sometimes this can be a little bit strong because you can use it from like floor to floor, and it can lead to some moments where it's a little bit too powerful. So maybe like 15 meters, knock off a few meters there, 16 meters, something like that. Ultimate Weapon. Whenever you search a locker, survivors within 40 meters gain blindness for 30 seconds and they scream with a cooldown of 45 seconds. I want to say this is actually probably fine. This has also been through a few iterations, and it used to be very overpowered actually. I want to say this is actually kind of okay nowadays. Maybe could even use a slight buff and give it Oblivious as well or something, because it's only 30 seconds, isn't it? So I don't think this is so bad. Maybe extend out the range a little bit as well. 40 meters is quite a lot actually now. 40 meters is enough. Maybe Oblivious though, yeah. Unbound. Whenever a healthy survivor becomes injured for the next 30 seconds, whenever you basic vault a window, gain 7% haste for 10 seconds. This is fairly decent, but again, I think the window of time this is active is kind of short, honestly. So I would maybe extend it out to like 45 seconds. I think the duration, the percentage of haste for 10 seconds is fine, but the window this is active for needs to be a little longer, I think, because there's times I feel like where you can hit someone and they can pretty easily just get to the next area. Yeah, I think so. It also means when you down someone, you don't get this effect. So this is already only activatable during healthy chases, not against perks like Dead Hard, for example, which does hinder it. So I think if it's going to remain like this, it needs a longer activation window, maybe even 60 seconds, or maybe even just until the chases drop dropped or something, possibly. Yeah, I think so. Undone. Whenever a survivor misses a basic skill check, earn 3 tokens up to 30. Whenever you damage a generator, spend all tokens for each token spent. The generator loses 1% progress, the generator is blocked for 1 second. When that generator is unblocked, it begins regressing with a cooldown of 60 seconds. The main problem with this is that people don't really miss skill checks. The only time they're going to is if you're running a specific build to make them miss, which I think kind of makes this perk a little bit unhealthy actually. So I think this needs a little bit of a rework somehow. Maybe make it so it has some kind of inbuilt mechanic which gets people to miss skill checks. I think that'd make it a bit more effective. Like a baseline skill checks are, I don't know, 10% faster, or like it needs something like that, I think. Some kind of like mechanic where skill checks are harder to hit, maybe in your terror radius or something, I don't know. Because I think otherwise like people just don't miss skill checks enough, and I also think having a whole build just to make this one perk work is kind of silly. It should work, it should function by itself. So I think, yeah, some kind of thing that makes skill checks harder in conjunction with this perk. What do you think they could add for this? Unforeseen. Whenever you damage a generator, your terror radius is set to that generator for 30 seconds, and its radius is 32 meters. You gain undetectable for that time. So this is like another one of those perks where you're putting your aura, you're putting your, my brain's going to mush after all this. You're putting your terror radius onto a generator or a survivor or a spot of some kind. I never think it's that effective. It doesn't confuse people that much, I think. Especially once they realize like, oh, it's emanating from the generator. It doesn't do much after that, I think. And they're also more alert. This is also kind of bad, I think, because it only does it for 30 seconds. Maybe a better effect would be if it applied to the generator until it stopped regressing. So you damage the generator and this continues on until the gen stops regressing. Like that would be a better effect, with maybe a minimum baseline of 30 seconds. So you're guaranteed 30 seconds of value, and then also it does it till you stop regressing. Or you're able to do this for multiple gens in the map. That'd be super cool. Does it work already like this? It doesn't stipulate it, does it? If it works like that, that's actually kind of cool. I don't know if it does, but if you could have like all 7 generators emitting a terror radius at the same time, that'd be so cool. Imagine that. Unnerving presence. Survivors within your terror radius get 10% more basic skill checks. The good zone of basic skill checks is 60% smaller. This feels like such an outdated perk, honestly. It's one of the very, very early ones from like the launch of the game, and it's really not been changed all too much. I think it's had a few number changes. Debatably, it's even a nerf to you because skilled survivors aren't going to be too bothered about a 60% smaller good zone, and more skill checks is kind of inadvertently a buff because they can get more bonus percentages if they hit greats, and therefore this perk is just kind of a nerf. So if it's going to do this, maybe instead what it should do, it should be that within your terror radius, it should be like 100% more skill checks and there's 0 good zone. You know, like something like that where it actually makes it really difficult to do the gen in your terror radius. The only thing with that is that maybe that'd be a little too punishing for like 3 gen camping or something, which is maybe why it's not like that. But it does mean that skilled survivors could still clear it. So I don't know. That one's kind of tough to balance actually. I wouldn't be upset if they just completely reworked this, honestly, because this is kind of just one of those perks. It's like, why is that a whole perk by itself? It doesn't do enough. Unrelenting. Whenever you miss a basic attack, your cooldown is 30% shorter. I kind of wish this was maybe just merged with something like Save the Best for Last. Like this could be a Save the Best for Last passive, for example. Yeah, something like that. Or even just give it a Save the Best for Last effect, which it actually used to have originally. It was a little too high originally. It was like 22%. But they could give it this. They could say 30% for missed attacks, 10% for hit attacks. Something like that could be kind of cool, I think. Because then there's stacking potential as well. And also now that we have diminishing returns, it would probably be okay. Wandering Eye. No idea what this perk does. Whenever you start chasing a survivor for the next 5 seconds, you see the auras of all other injured survivors within 20 meters. Cooldown 30 seconds. Again, lots of weird stipulations on this one. Why is it just injured survivors? I think at base, just make it all survivors. Maybe even make it 32 meters, like a base terror radius level. And yeah, that'd be fine. Or maybe even just don't put a cooldown on it. Maybe make it so for the duration of a chase with the survivor, you see anyone within 20 meters of them with an aura. Would that really be so OP? I don't think so. It could actually be quite good for locating people or adjusting your chase when you need and stuff like that. That'd be fine. I think that's actually like a decent idea. But currently, like the cooldowns are silly. The fact that it's only for 5 seconds. Is it just for 5 seconds? It is just for 5 seconds. That's terrible. That's really bad. Remove that. Weave Attunement. The first time each item is depleted, it is dropped. While a survivor is within 12 meters of a dropped item, you see their aura and they see the item's aura aura. Whenever a survivor picks up an item, they gain Oblivious for 30 seconds. This at one point, upon its release, had a little bit of a meta, actually, with Franklin's demise. I think this could be fine if they just buff the range of the dropped item, honestly. Make it like 20 meters or something. Make it something a little bit more dangerous, and it'd actually be sort of good again. This meta was never that strong. I think it was really overblown at the time, and I think buffing this again would honestly be okay. Yeah, I think so. I personally like the meta on both sides, but I know it's a little bit hot take. Whispers, a very interesting perk, another one that has not been changed in 10 years since the launch of the game. While within 32 meters of a survivor, you randomly hear whispers. If you don't know how this functions, this is a sound made by the entity. When you're within 32 meters of a survivor, you hear that kind of thing. And it alerts you that someone within 32 meters of you is there, basically. The problem with this is it's not directional. It doesn't work in like a cone shape like this, where you can actually detect the exact area a survivor is in. It's just 32 meters around you, which is not very helpful a lot of the time. It does help, for sure. It's half decent, but this is also not favored by almost anyone because it's not very specific. It's often quite hard to use. I think a lot of people find this one hard to use. And so making it directional even would instantly make this so much more viable, especially for people who love to hide. So yeah, I like that as a change. Just make it directional. It's already pretty good, but I think making it directional would be great. Finally, our final perk today, Zanshin Tactics. Within 32 meters, you see the auras of pallets and windows. Whenever a survivor drops a pallet, you see their aura for 5 seconds. So this is kind of like Windows, but for the killer side. And yeah, I think it's pretty functional the way it is. Maybe this would be a bit too visually overstimulating, but I think this perk would actually be better if it was just map wide, because as a killer, I think it's not that OP to have that much resource tracking. If you can see the auras of all pallets and windows, you can track all of the pallets / windows that are available or whatever. Seeing them always, I don't think is that overpowered. And it could actually lead to great moments where you can get more information on survivor locations when they use things like any means necessary and stuff like that. I actually think doing this map wide would be pretty cool. And there shouldn't be too many auras, I think. But I think that's a better effect. And then knock off the secondary effect. Just make it a simple, you see the auras of all pallets and windows on the map. Let's go for a crazy one to end it off. Alright, well, that's going to do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like this kind of style of content. I know it's a little bit different, but I thought I'd try something new. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know, again, your thoughts for any of these or all of these down below. That might be a bit of a task. And yeah, thanks for watching, and goodbye.